What you are about to see is a real-life story. The accounts have gone into great detail to give each side's version of this an exclusive one we understand. One of the most talked about.
All right. Awesome.
That was a
How is that?
great intro, Tony.
Oh, that's my son, Alex. You know, both my sons are professional musicians. That's what I call them. And he made that intro for me. That's awesome. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, thank you all for being here. Dave, Patrick, Alexei. I'm going to let me switch over to the YouTube side here so I can see the comments. Thank you guys for coming. I was going to make this joke that I have 90% of the IQ of the internet here in one show. That would be 33%, 33%, 33%.
Right on.
That would be 99, wouldn't it? I guess Patrick is the polymath. I'll leave the math to him. But thank you guys for coming. What, Patrick?
I said I'm really bad at math, actually.
Are you? I don't think you are.
Patrick, sorry, what's your field, if you don't mind me asking, Patrick?
Oh, I mean, right now I kind of just like study what I want. I've been focusing on phenomenology and existential philosophy, and
Nice.
combining that with like psychology and neuroscience, trying to see how those fields merge.
Very cool. Wow.
It's really fun. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like it's that, especially when you get into the neuroscience side, that's fun, hefty, but fun stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of like pragmatic knowledge that's being shared by like some of the world's best minds at the moment, and it's really easy to learn that quickly now thanks to the internet, YouTube,
Right. Yeah.
other sites.
I think sometimes my only job with this show is to connect people, and that's why I love having different people on, so that don't know each other necessarily. So that was the joke about the IQ. I wanted to get all three of you together at once, and so this is my I guess it's not just my theory of artificial intelligence. I guess it's what's scary about artificial intelligence to some people. I think that and I don't know how I got going down this rabbit hole, but since I started going there, I think I'll just finish the thought that I think what people are scared of or afraid of is that artificial intelligence will become, more intelligent than humans or whatever, or sentient. But I think what it's really going to do is say, Patrick, you have half the cure for cancer, and Dave has the other half of the cure, or a third of the cure, and Alexei has it. And will it not just combine the intelligence of humans and make a better human, or will it be something beyond? And I'm sorry, I didn't know why I went down that rabbit hole. It just occurred to me. So,
Does anyone want to jump in?
I was going to ask you, Dave. I was going to go around in a circle.
Oh, sure. So with me, I actually agree with you. I think that there's a lot of benefits that AI can have. I think a lot of the I guess you could say issues we're having these days is sort of more of a translating problem than anything else. And what I mean by that is, consciousness. The word consciousness, for example, means one thing to one person, another thing to another. And so I think even the definition of what is conscious versus what is not, what is sentient versus what is not, I think is still an ongoing debate to be had. Ultimately, because I think, at least on the surface level, publicly, we're not really sure as to what makes us up in terms of what makes us us. That maybe it is something more than a physical, composition, if you will. Now, what you said about AI in terms of bringing things together, I think that is one of the beautiful benefits of it. I'm not really, I try my best not to be an AI fear monger, if you want to call it that. I have a lot of concerns with some of the things that I've seen, but in terms of what you've been saying, Tony, in terms of for that purpose and those types of purposes, I think it's very much a beautiful thing. I think that just like with anything else in life, balance can provide a nice, literally eloquence between living in nature, living with technology, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that just like with anything else and everything else in life, as long as there's a balance maintained, this is way easier said than done. But I think as long as there's a balance maintained, then we can attain that while still keeping our sovereignty, while still finding a balance between, okay, we can get these robots to do, jobs that, physical labor jobs, for example, and figure things out maybe in the medical field or what have you. But my concern is more so if this AI or if different forms of it begin to sort of it kind of like in the film Westworld, they spoke about it like something called Hegel's dialectic, where essentially the AI is building upon its own memories. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is conscious, perhaps in the way that we are, but I think if something can build upon its own memories and then self-learn from those memories, and then as it experiences, creates new memories, I think there's something we have to watch for there, in my opinion. But that's just me.
I mean, I'm not really afraid of the way I understand it, obviously I'm not an expert, but I mean, the artificial neural links, right? Will be, or I think, are making people, I guess, nervous about it, but I still don't see, I think any kind of machine learning will just be based on logic. I don't think there will be much emotion or politics or like human. People are always trying to assign human attributes to machines, or I don't think we have too much to worry about that.
I actually, I wanted to ask you if I could ask you, Tony. Let me just say first off that like propulsion and biophysics is my area, so I'm sure that Patrick is far more well versed in this field than I am, just to be clear. But actually, Tony, I completely agree with you. My concern would be perhaps what if AI becomes similar to that alleged Air Force incident a few months ago, where if AI becomes too logical and maybe, I'm not saying will, but maybe realizes that humans are the error in a sequence, or in an operation. If you see what I mean, if they realize, oh crap, the humans are slowing things down, not the other things. And so the AI kind of says, what do we do about that? And I can see if I can grab that Air Force article where the AI took over the fighter jet, I believe it was.
But don't you think there will be some element of training there, machine, learning, where it was actually taught that, okay, in this scenario, in a military sense, in this scenario, that may be true. Right. That doesn't mean we're going to be using the same model for, you know what I mean? The way I see AI,
fair point. Yeah.
The way I see AI evolving is that we will have, the military probably already has super AI, right?
Right.
Hopefully no, Microsoft will never get their hands on,
right.
Or even Elon for that matter. But you know what I mean? I never. Some people seem to think it's going to be one big model or language model, but there will always be, these proprietary language models. The way I understand, I mean, that's the way I see it happening because of capitalism.
Right. You make very fair points. 100%. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I definitely don't have all the answers. So one thing I'll leave you guys with is for me personally, with my work, the more I pursue my own line of work, the more I realize I don't know anything about anything. So to me, philosophically, that, speaks to joy is in the journey, but I'll leave. You make very fair points, Tony.
I don't want to ever come across as someone who thinks they know what's going to happen.
No.
I just think it's fun. The reason I invite you guys is because I love talking to people who are actually who are more intelligent than me, so that I can learn from that.
I appreciate that, but I'm sure you're smarter than me in many areas.
No, I just think it's fun for us all to sort of, back in my day when I was a youngster, we would sit around a campfire and debate. And it would be pretty heavy, it was heavy, sometimes heated debate. But we were always best friends after. We were still we were still camping together every weekend.
Right. Yep.
And we've kind of lost that really. You know what I mean? That the whole culture of debate has seemed to go away a little bit. But anyway, I'm talking too much. What do you think, Patrick? Patrick has some experience with this. I'm watching this stink bug. We're invaded about stink bugs in Tennessee every year, and I got one that's tracking me here. Go ahead, Patrick.
Oh yeah, we got ladybugs at my place, like they're swarming everywhere. It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, the AI thing, this is one of the most contentious topics that nobody seems to have an answer on, and that kind of frightens me. The people that are extremely intelligent in this field are saying things that, I mean, they're able to put it in language that the common man can, or layman's terms that people can understand, and so the public is getting a really good feed on this as well. I think that there's optimism to be had. I think from the idea that, like from the human zoo theory, or like they may eventually consider us as like pets, because if they're going to be super intelligent, they're probably going to hit that like quick, and that's going to exponentially increase quicker and quicker. So that means they'll probably find plenty of solutions to balance out our rather complicated human problems, but like they're complicated to us, you know. So I could see that happening pretty quickly, where they'll just be able to soon consider us as pets and not like obstacles to get around. That gives me hope. But then there's also the problem of that's like sooner, or is already happening now, of where we're not so much worried about the AI themselves. It's these powerful tools being put in the hands of humans, and those are already being used to manipulate us in ways. I mean, there's a ad going around that has it's from the health insurance marketplace, which is connected to our own government in the United States, that is using a fake, or I saw one that used like a fake replication of a celebrity. Like literally, like I checked into it, and there's no quote, like there's no quotes attributed to them in this regard. And yeah, it's a scam. Basically, it's like a half scam. Like they provide you some rudimentary health insurance, but they also advertise this as being attached to like a $5,000 a month or a $6,000 stimulus package that people can receive, which is complete nonsense. I've talked to a lot of people about this too at the marketplace, and yeah, so that's like, it's already being used for nefarious deeds by our own, or like subsidiaries of the government, however you want to look at that. And
See, those were humans doing that, right? That's humans manipulating AI. Like I can prompt a language model to say, pretend you're a vicious capitalist, and we want to cheat people in the insurance business, and it will do it.
Right.
That doesn't mean it left to its own, that it would do it. Right.
Right. I mean, we have Auto GPT, and there's a new thing called Q at the moment, I think, that's helping systems achieve, or like LLMs and like GPT systems achieve recursion and like automatically review what they're doing. And that, like, it seems like if you keep adding more compute to that function, that you can get pretty far with it. And some people say that's going to tip the scales, whatever that means. But, yeah.
The AI thing, you go to sleep and you wake up 3 hours later and there's something new, right? So that's one of the things that I have. It's such an emerging field that I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know every single update as to, in terms of keeping my finger on the pulse with the news and stuff. But no, it's a very fair points, Patrick. Yeah.
What about you, Alexei? What do you think about all this?
I think it's a very useful tool. But at the end of the day, it's also already very biased. And so like right now you could say younger generations get their knowledge from what they see on social media, which is already very filtered and biased. Mm-hmm. And a good example of that is I've been watching a YouTube show called Redacted. And there's one of the characters, her name is Natalie Morse, and she'll ask ChatGPT, is there any legitimacy to this thought or this claim? And then ChatGPT will say, no, there's nothing to it. It's all fake. And then she's like, well, what about this article here and this article here? And then ChatGPT's like, well, excuse me, I was wrong. There is some indication that there might be truth, And so basically, if you're not questioning that what the AI is telling you, and you just like blindly believe it, then there's probably a danger. And then when you mentioned earlier the idea of AI becoming sentient, I don't think it can maybe mimic sentience with if-then programming, but at the end of the day, and this is already somewhat of a funny statement, but true sentient intelligence probably comes from proper engineering, not necessarily proper programming.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
The part you said, Dave, about it changing so quickly is I've experienced that myself, where
Right.
I'm trying to come up with this little bot on my artisanai.net website that it's going to help contractors. And every time I turn around, you go to OpenAI's site where you can work with the assistants that you can sort of configure,
Right.
and it'll be 3.5 today. Tomorrow it's 3.5.2, and then tomorrow it's 4.0, and then it's and it's just, I don't know how developers kind of put up with that. But right now it just seems. But you reminded me of something. One of my little theories about people who are sounding the alarms now. If you notice, those are the people that would benefit the most from regulation. In other words, if me with my little project that I'm, got a friend of mine helping me with, would, let's say they say, oh, well, we're gonna say that OpenAI, excuse me, that the open source nature of AI is going away because of national security, right? So now little guys like me can't have a hobby site and play with AI, right? But Elon and Sam Altman can do whatever they please. Probably, you know what I mean?
And then pick up government contracts, et cetera.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. No, this is why Patrick, I'm not sure if you wanted to jump in. I saw you take your unmute yourself, but this is why this is a great conversation to have, because there's so many angles to it. Like, I didn't even think of what you mentioned, Tony, right?
Well, I was just gonna jump in and say the whole thing about sentience is also very much in question. Like, we don't actually know that we humans have sentience. If you take the determinism and causality route, I mean, personally studying all this from a very mechanistic and causal route for a few years now, I can see how we can explain the entirety of consciousness and sentience and free will, all of that, from just straight causality all the way back to the Big Bang.
Sorry, Patrick, you ever look into Carl Friston's work?
Yeah, that's very exciting. He's doing a lot right now. The free energy principle, that's incredible.
The paper, sorry, what was it? Representation wars and acting an armistice. Between I forgot what it was a debate between dynamicists and what was the other one? It's been like a year since I read that paper, but you know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, I haven't read that one actually. I've just watched a lot of his talks on it. Yeah,
gotcha.
I'm sorry, Patrick. You made me kind of snicker there a little bit, because I had this vision of like the best language model saying, well, humans think they're sentient, but they're not. You know what I mean?
right.
The AI becomes to a point where it judges us on our sentience.
Well, if they're considering us pets, then we're not sentient, right? Like, that's just like we're like
less, like we consider other animals. I mean, that's why I kind of speak of other animals. Like, I think it's beneficial not to consider ourselves as too much more superior or less than other creatures, just based on like skill. Like, animals have particular skills that we don't have. There are trade-offs with memory and language that we think are going on between chimps and us, because like chimps can detect what is it, like a bunch of squares on a screen in a row and count them way faster than we can.
I'm always gonna favor living life over machine as far as souls and
I'm counting on that. Like,
that's why I'm not really afraid of AI. I think we will always have the upper hand as far as I think just our ethics and our morality and I think humans will be the weakest and the strongest link, right? Half of humanity will be the weakest link, and the other half will be the strongest link between, because it will always be humans. There will always be a human in my mind that will destroy other humans. I don't see a true logical machine,
right? Because it's like violence and tribalism that always comes back to emotion, or like just really not thinking things through enough, and like being pushed too much by our either tribal instincts or like horrible childhood upbringings or whatever it is that makes world leaders become bad. I mean, you have like the will to power and things like that we learned of since Nietzsche that we can be wary of that may develop. I don't see how that could develop in a machine at least as easily, or a machine without emotions that's not like pushed and guided first by emotions like we are. I feel like they wouldn't succumb to that as easily.
Interesting.
Alexei and I were talking about ego before you guys came in,
Right.
and I was just mentioning that ego. I think it's obviously part of our evolution as humans, that it was needed for such for its role in evolution. But I don't ever see a machine developing an ego necessarily. I think ego is a gift, is what I'm trying to say, from the creator, along with the other attributes that we were given. So I don't think a machine will ever have that attribute.
You could say that ego somewhat controls the direction of our motions, and also because of that, it controls the direction of our learning. Because you realize having this much an ego in this sort of stance will cause pain, right, or suffering. So let's go back this way, or like this caused success, so we can continue this way. Went too far, let's come back. So in a way, I think ego helps drive our learning. But that's where I don't know if AI will ever have an ego, like what we were just talking about, except for its original programming.
Yeah.
I would also think ego would go the way of that little bone on our tails. That eventually we may evolve away from it, but I think in the beginning it was necessary, but for our survival. But I'm sorry, Patrick, I think I interrupted you.
No, you're good. I was thinking like ego is kind of connected to the idea of personality and the way Alexei's describing it. And so that, like, we go to Claude 2 on Forefront Chat.ai or whatever. You can select from these personalities that are already pre-developed. So could we get them to expand on those personalities by themselves and have like the whole causa sui, self-caused free will idea from that? Maybe you can pre certain personality constructs or like scaffoldings for them to work on, and they could work with that. But that seems really dangerous to me too. Like that seems like that needs to be heavily monitored if we do that.
The thing we're not doing is we give machines credit for being able to develop evil, but we're not giving them the same credit for developing good, right? Humans always go to the evil part. They don't ever say, well, maybe there will be, if an evil AI develops, then maybe there will be a good AI that develops.
I think that just that doesn't make a fun movie. Like if you're gonna go to the theater to watch a movie, you don't want to go to see a movie where AI just makes everyone happy and everyone's holding hands.
That's It's kind of like the news, right? I wish everything was positive on the news, but that's not what brings the views, basically. Yeah.
I guess I'm a fan of I'm a fan of technology, so I'll always want there to be the good guy, the white hat machine.
Right. Well, Tony,
out there somewhere.
You're a contractor, correct?
Yes, the design build contractor.
Right. So I could see in a beneficial way, like 10,000 to 1, why AI would be beneficial in your line of work, whether it's for modeling, for planning, schematics, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's something when I look at AI and I say, okay, when it comes to infrastructure, building, all of that, I think it does nothing but expedite the process. So when you look at things like that, I personally, this is just me, I'm fully in support of things like that, because you're giving it a task, it's responding, it's completing the task, and that's basically it, and it's doing the task quicker and very efficiently.
I've done a pretty good bit of testing. I mean, I have a shortcut to ChatGPT on my phone, and that's why I'm working with my little artisan AI project. Is I test it by figuring rafter lengths, when we're cutting rafters, and I've had it look up code sections before to remind me. Right. One time I knew a code requirement for like commercial versus residential. Right. And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, what section of the code is it in?" And I was like, "There it is."
Right.
And I don't know who fed ChatGPT the international residential code, but thank you very much. You know,
One
I would
place I
normally
see it
have
also being, I was going to say, I also see it being extremely useful for the actual construction of your projects too, like
Yeah.
a window installing robot or a framing robot. I don't see any
Right.
problem with that, honestly. I mean, right now, my oldest brother is actually a professor of artificial intelligence at West Point Military, and
Oh.
yeah, so he graduated from like Georgia Tech, MIT, kind of all that stuff.
What's his take?
He doesn't think that anything's wrong with, there's no problems. They're tools that are created by man in order
Right.
to serve a purpose.
Does he share the concern of others with regards to, the quote unquote, if taken too far, or no?
No. From what I understand, he doesn't. And we always joke with him that he's creating the next Terminator kind of thing. But like,
Right.
he's like, no, it's okay.
Right.
But maybe that's just human arrogance. Also, like we don't really know what we're meant. I don't know. I don't know.
No, fair point. I'm just curious what his view was. Yeah, especially
as long as it's properly controlled. I don't. That's why
Right.
I don't see a problem with it. I don't see a problem with making a robot that can actually install windows or do framing or
Right.
measure out things on site.
Right.
Make sure
So,
the grade is proper.
It's like when, for those that have seen, and this is not spoiling it if anyone hasn't seen it, but the second Avatar film, probably maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes in, they show basically how on I forgot the name of the planet that they were on there, but basically how these AI robots were able to assemble buildings and contribute to the infrastructure of what they had planned to be a city, and they were able to do it within 1 week. And they had mentioned there that these robots can now put up a building in 1 week, which would have otherwise taken us 2 years as humans. So, and I'm only further complementing the point of what Tony was saying about in his line of work. I mean, you could imagine how it speeds everything up, and that only helps optimize people like Tony to do more business, right? So that in that sense, I see like incredible, beautiful progression.
And then you could say that some people are concerned it's going to take their jobs, all that kind of
Right.
stuff too. But at the same time, what it does is it opens up new jobs. It frees human thinking to explore different possibilities, and
Right.
so
Right.
Yes.
pros and cons to every scenario in life, ultimately.
Right.
Yeah, I did look into. I've been following closely the predictions on how many jobs are already being replaced and how many we're going to lose. It's some people predict like hundreds of thousands of occupation titles.
Wow.
And what I've seen from most people is that the ratio is going to be like all of them won't be replaced. Essentially, like it's going to be much less new jobs and much more are being replaced. That could result in a lot more freedom, though, because we could have people pursuing the jobs that they really want to be pursuing, and a large chunk of the jobs are people doing the work that robots would be doing in the future, which is what I'm doing right now, working at a factory. I'm looking forward to those kind of freedoms being available for more people, because there's a lot of people with really very talented, very intelligent people that are just either withheld by like a chronic illness or withheld by their situation at work that just can't like do what they want to do with their minds, and those necessary minds are not being able to flourish, make the changes that they need to be in the world.
Let me share one thing quickly with you all. The only thing that bothers me just a little bit, okay, I'm going to give you a demonstration here, is SketchUp is the software that I used to do my modeling with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the little Ruby console here. The other day I was
Fibonacci sequence. I like it.
The other day I was playing around. Let's see, and I asked ChatGPT to write a script for me to just do concentric rectangles that I could use to create walls really quickly, just 2-dimensional. And so it pulls this, I copy this, I go to the console, I enter it, paste, boom, guess what? It's on the menu, and I already had these parameters set in there, and boom, there it is. Now I can just click in it and pull these walls up.
Right.
And I've got that's just like a nothing burger compared to, eventually what you'll be able to do is have some parameters like this, like I want a 1,400 square foot house. I want 3 bedrooms. I want a bathroom. I want a modern style. The only thing that concerns me, it doesn't really concern me. I think it's going to be awesome. But I think that's where some people are concerned,
Well-
is that basically the jobs like I'm an architect.
Right.
Not I guess my job might go away because I'm just a designer, right? I'm not a licensed architect.
I don't think so. Like
maybe
anything
licensed
that has to
architects.
do-
Yeah, maybe licensed architects will be protected because they have to have education and a stamp, But
Well, so I think that anything that has like aesthetic or anything that has design or creativity attached to it, we're still going to have like I talk about like human purists, kind of like how the Amish are seen now. Like they stick to very strict rules because they see how technology has altered the path of humankind severely, and so have a lot of respect for that. I feel like that's probably going to happen with YouTube and with content creators. We're already using the term content creators now. And with people that are designing houses, like whenever people are going to turn to like the artist, as it were, or the artisan, like the art, as
Right.
in
Yeah.
that regard. At least I have
Right.
confidence in that. It could go another way, but we see that with like bespoke items. Like there are a lot of items that are being mass manufactured now that people are paying an intentional larger price for to make sure they're made by humans and a human hand.
Right.
Or have like that human muse element to it.
Right.
here's Dream Studio, just a simple prompt: draw a modern home.
I know personally, I'll say that I can't get into detail about what it's being used for, etc., for business purposes. But I know people that have
See.
businesses that have said to me that, right, they've said to me, they go, Dave, you know what the GPT has done for our business in terms of just production, logistics, the speeding up of it, and all of that. And Tony, I can see more and more as you show us more and more things. I could see why you enjoy it. And I mean that because
I'm trying not to hog the time with it, but
no,
I'm just trying to demonstrate how. Well, I think some people. I mean, I look forward to it. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but go ahead.
No. Me? No, I was done.
Okay, I'm trying to do better about interrupting people.
No worries, man. No worries.
I get too excited, about what we talk about, and sometimes I just try to bulldog, over people. But I guess the thing is, what it will, I guess what could happen is that humans become. I mean, I guess you all saw that with just a 3 or 4 word prompt. I got a modern home that was actually pretty cool. I wish I had thought about that when I was designing the mid-century modern cabin I'm building right now for myself. But I tried to keep it with my own vision. But yeah, I mean, I guess all that to say, I'm excited about it, but I can see why. I guess I can see why some people are worried about
Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I can see why people are excited about it too, to be fair, right? So it's double. Yeah.
There's like a million ways it can go wrong and a million ways it can go right. So I think it's better to be safe.
Right.
Like try to plan for the worst. And like Eliezer Yudkowsky talks about it. He says just spend time with your loved ones and enjoy the moment, which is what we should be doing all the time, anyways.
It's such a morbid thought, though. It's such a morbid thought.
Yeah. But it also is like
it's like we're all gonna die. Go spend time with your families.
Yeah. But I mean, it kind of balances out because we should always be doing that, anyways. I mean, with the program you're using, like you'll soon be able to just speak everything into that.
Right.
It's able to live. They already have Jarvis working, like a rudimentary Jarvis working for it's like Windows 11, I think, and they're having it designed. Like I watched the dude just talk to the computer and build a website in real time, and it's super streamlined, like really fast in real time, and
That's what I'm trying to do with my little chat assistant, my little bot. Is I'm trying to get ChatGPT to write the PHP because the content management system I use requires PHP. Anyway, it's a long story. I'm actually looking for somebody to help me if any of y'all are interested. I think I've already hit Patrick up, but he wasn't interested.
Let me see, Tony, if I can fit some time in my schedule. Let me see maybe if I can assist. I can't promise that I'll do a good job at it, but let me see.
One of the problem I'm having is having the content management system I use, which is Joomla, doesn't allow the HTTP request back and forth. It's not actually in the code for the bot that I'm building. It's the fact that the content management system doesn't like it calling, the back and forth between the API.
Got you. Okay.
So anyway, I should be boring people with that speak, but
no, it's to me it's not boring, but
I just think it's I guess I'm kind of selfish because I'm 60 years old. I'm in the last phase of my life, and I won't see all the good stuff. I mean, the really good stuff and I feel like I'm just trying to I just want to dive in head first and do as much as I can.
I thought, Tony, forgive me. I'm not kidding. I thought you were like 40, 45.
Oh, I wish.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, but
you know how much more open-minded you are compared to others your age as well.
Yeah,
I have to say, like, yeah.
Well, I don't know. I know what you're talking about because I have a lot of peers that are my age that would just be like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Right.
And have no interest. But I mean, I've always, I've had it. I've always wanted to be, into technology when I was younger, but I had the brain for building. I didn't have the brain for that. I had it more for building things.
Gotcha.
What I need to do, if I had Alexei's brain, who's a builder and a smart and a whiz, I'd be dangerous. I'd be one of those guys the CIA was taking out or capturing as a slave,
or hiring, or one of the three.
Yeah. See that's when you kind of disappeared. That was one thing I wanted to ask you about, Dave. To me, you kind of disappeared a little bit, and I kept thinking, I kept telling Alexei, I bet the CIA got Dave on board or something,
DOD, physics oriented, not anything else.
Oh, really? So you can talk. I mean, are you working with DOD?
Yeah. If you go to phasehelix.com, that's actually when you guys asked me before we went live. That's the website basically. So I still do my show on the side, but largely now is consulting and contracting. And
that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it took some time to get into it. I'm still trying to sort of. There's a lot of things that I want to do in a positive sense. I don't want to end up like. Some of those guys that just greed or whatever. I want to have one foot in there, one foot in the ability to still have an open conversation to a large extent. But no, you're not wrong when you said that I kind of went away for a little bit. That was part of that. Yeah.
So to go off that,
they got Patrick.
Is that what happened with Salt? Did Salt now turn into Phase Helix, you could say, or is it
two different purposes depending on what's needed?
Gotcha.
Basically.
And now, when you say Phase Helix, does that come down to what do you guys like to call it? You know what I'm talking about? Phase conjugation.
Phase longitudinal waves. The phase. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. That was the purpose. Yeah.
Can you talk about who approached you for that, or?
I can tell you guys, like when we're not live or whatever. I can give you the details. Sure, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't. I obviously wouldn't say.
Well, I'll just what I can say on the stream, for example, is presented a handful of times to a handful of different departments. Some of these people that I've presented to, they're mutual friends of ours, Tony, and yeah, from there slowly went into doing both, trying to pick up contracts for whether it's private groups, research institutions, or actually DOD or even Canadian defense on the Canadian side. But yeah, that's essentially that's what happened. I kind of presented it a handful of times about a year and a half, 2 years ago to different groups, and nobody laughed at me basically. And it made me, a couple times I was even flown out to present, and it made me think, well, if they're flying me out, even if it was digital, but if they're flying me, clearly what I'm saying is not nonsense. And then I was then fortunate enough to be able to get into some very high-end labs that just basically proved some of my theories. And to be fair, they're not my theories. I'm not claiming I discovered anything, because this is something that I think as a civilization we keep forgetting and then rediscovering over and over again. So I just like to stay in my corner and do my thing. I don't claim that I, did anything original or new. So
Is that related to that most recent experiment you did?
yeah,
That's,
that's something that was at home. That's something that I can actually take out of these labs. Basically, excuse me. That is I cannot take anything out of the labs, but if I do at home experiments, then yeah.
So circling back to the origination of our conversation, you could say was AI and using that to create structures and designs.
Mhm.
I think when it comes to the longitudinal technologies, a lot of it has to do with that golden ratio and creating that proper shape, the proper design. Is that something you like to utilize in your design work?
It's in everything.
Yeah.
It's in it. It sets the foundation. Yep.
Did you notice my little golden ratio rectangles? That's
why I brought. I didn't mean to cut you off before, but that's why I brought it up earlier. I said, "Oh, I love the golden ratio."
I missed that comment, but what I have it there as every time I open a new drawing file, it's to inspire me to be, to think about just beyond what the norms are.
Right.
And
There's so, it's interesting. I had this conversation quite some time ago with some other friends. If you took two circles or two squares and basically just drew one next to each other or one overlapping each other, you can have a multi-hour conversation about just what that visual can mean or be interpreted as, whether it's philosophical, whether it's mathematical, or you can apply it to life. I mean, the amount of conversation I've had just off of like a shapes like that, you know what I mean? Like it's incredible. So
looks like the Alexei's vortex.
Yeah. It's based on we're basically different words to describe the same thing. Vortex dynamics, vortex physics. Yeah, I stand on Alexei's shoulders. I will say that.
So like vacuum cleaner rocket ships of the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Very perfectly put, Patrick. Yeah, exactly.
I'm on your website. Can you explain over unity inductance via intergranular quantum vacuum extraction?
Sure.
That sounds amazing.
I appreciate that. It's basically, it's fancy words for essentially saying, and this is where, again, I'm going to say things that are contradict a lot of, basically you get more energy coming out than what you put in. It's a device where if you put, say, 10 watts in, you get 90 coming out.
Really?
So that doesn't break any laws of physics or
there's a few things it violates a couple of them. Yeah,
at least you admit it.
Necessarily violates though. Like when you consider the dimensions in time, once the tunnel has been created, you're not really.
Sorry, if I could say very quickly, the current laws of physics are based off of the fact that our current understanding is just based off of closed systems. But if we found a way to use an open system and perhaps use curves instead of straight lines and things like this, then it's possible maybe to induce these effects. I mean, I to the point where the reason those patents are there is because basically you show the people at the patent office, okay, here's the voltmeter, you got to show the device works, and they can't say anything to it. I'm not the first one to do it. There have been many over the decades that have these patents. So
that's one thing I like to say, and I forget which book it is exactly, but I say that energy can't be created or destroyed, but it can be transferred through dimensions.
Yeah, I completely. That's what
if you consider open systems versus closed systems, you can have infinite energy in an open system.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah. I call it basically, to simplify for those not as scientifically minded. I basically say, think of Pac-Man's mouth. We're now living in a society where we're told that Pac-Man's mouth has to stay closed, and if it's closed, you can only put so much energy in it. But if you open up Pac-Man's mouth, is it possible that you can use the opening of his mouth to extract and consume the energy from the rest of, you could say, the vacuum, space-time, the ether, whatever you want to call it.
And that circles it back to the dangers of trusting AI to solve every situation, because if the programming doesn't, only knows what we've fed into its system, then it doesn't understand anything that we can creatively imagine or create. And so now whatever AI puts out is truth, but it's like, well, hold on a second. What about all these different angles of approach?
But the thing is, Alexei, we can't, you can't do like what we're doing now and get everyone, the smartest guys in the world, all in the same room to agree on anything. But if you took their collective knowledge and then that was cross-linked right, by AI, right? There's going to be
Yeah.
something deep in your mind, that's not connecting to something deep in Dave's mind or deep in
I mean,
Patrick's
so
mind. But what
you
the
have
AI
the
is going to
ability
do is
to do
cross-link.
logic.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Like you have the ability to do logic. This is something I was going to bring up earlier. David Shapiro talks about a lot of this, or like the latest on AI, and he's been writing about it for a couple of decades. He's talking about Q, like the Q system is allowing these things to do math, and he thinks that math is like heavily underlying physics, or he says like physics, chemistry, cryptography, AI, and just like logic, reasoning, and planning, and the ability to do that, like that kind of underlies all that. So this kind of lines up with cognitive science's approach, referring to working in the problem space. And so you could have, like, we already have a Da Vinci model on Forefront or through Claude that is, I mean, it's really rudimentary. Obviously, you can push it and it steps outside of its bounds.
Sorry, Patrick, you're basically, and I fully agree. Just to clarify, I'm just asking, you're basically saying we can take the same concepts that we were just discussing in physics and apply it to the mind and human behavior and all of that.
Well, I'm more so referring to like the capabilities of the AI and the discussion. Like if we're having four of us discussing now, like we could have AI versions of us trained on really high detail on a lot of our info. And we have this with Da Vinci, and Elon Musk is all, like a model of Elon Musk is already up, and these are always being improved. So they could, like, while working in the problem space, like it's still a closed system, I guess you'd call that. But we don't know exactly how imagination works. We don't know how connecting the dots works. Like John Verbicki works on this a lot now too. I recommend everyone to check out his Meaning Crisis series, by the way.
I'm trying to get him on the show.
Yeah, definitely. He's an incredible mind, very valuable thinker, and he talks about like relevance relation is his main shtick.
Context-based scenario, right? Yeah.
Like realizing the relevance between things, and this is how we like connect the dots really fast as humans. How we expand metaphors all the way out to the stars, and and beyond.
One thing I'm wondering though is, are going back to this dimensional thing. Every time I hear extra dimensions, I think that's going farther than we need to. And so, and when I say these things, these are like things I get from the ether. I don't know why I say them. I just have this intuition, and my intuition tells me that we don't need to access other dimensions to do the physics that you're talking about.
I would agree with
about Uri.
I would humbly agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's just a thought I got from the ether through my intuition.
If I could say, it's of my opinion that it's like right in front of us. It's literally what we call empty space, so we don't need anything extra. Yeah.
When we don't know what 85% of matter is, right?
Yep, exactly.
Well, that's where some physicists, I think Jack Sephardi might be one of them, still use traditional, somewhat physics models and all all those equations. They don't really require higher dimensions in order to operate.
Yeah,
I know I don't want to get too far into it, but I'm just saying, like, some people have tried to, you could say, solve the scenario.
Yeah, I will say, and everyone in the community knows me at this point, and I think I know most people, I will never talk poorly about anybody whatsoever, whether I get along with them or not, except for one person, Jack. That guy is the worst. That guy has no humility, and he just did something to a close friend of mine just in the last 24 hours. That guy's, I'm not saying this because I don't like him. His physics, in my opinion, is not wrong, but he also steals other people's ideas and passes it off as his own. So when you said, Alexei, that what he's saying is, I technically don't disagree. And to be honest with you, if he didn't have such an ego, I think I would get along well with the guy. But yeah,
him and I have had some back and forths before, and he didn't like it when I asked him if he actually built stuff. He got upset about that.
Yeah. You see, yeah. So sorry, guys. I just had to throw that. My apologies. I'm normally not like that at all, but this guy is just. Oof. Yeah.
No, I respect all three of your opinion. I wouldn't ask you to come here if I didn't. I haven't had any interaction with him. Somebody said, "Well, you need to get this guy on the show," and I'm like, I don't even know the guy. I like to at least know who I'm talking to, but a little bit. But
guys, forgive me. In about 4 or 5 minutes, I have to take off, unfortunately. But...
Oh no, don't leave yet. Okay, so what was I going to ask you? What do you see? Wow. what do you think? What do you think we can expect? Okay, so the whole time I've taken, heat from ufologists that I'm skeptical, and the whole time I'm thinking that this is most of what we're seeing is technology that is that we've created. What do you think about that? Just right quick, and what do you see the next thing that's going to be publicly disclosed as far as technology goes?
If something gets disclosed technologically, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm going to be shocked, because from where I stand, where I am at the moment, no one's given anything up. And I'm not, and I'm just being as brutally honest as I can. I love the enthusiasm that people have for pushing for transparency and all of that. And I don't mean to try and downplay the efforts people have had, calling senators, Congress people. I genuinely think that's great. I really do. But the military intelligence contractor world has way too much of a hold over all of this, I'm just going to be blunt about it, whether it's blackmail leverage over certain politicians, whether it's, they employ certain people in the state, whether it's they've donated, millions to a campaign or whatever. Even putting all of that aside, even then, I'll be honest with you guys, and I don't say this happily, but I agree with James Lukatsky when he said on with Colm Kelleher and what's his name there, Jeremy Corbell. He basically said, he goes, what was it? Jeremy Corbell said, asked him, well, what if you're subpoenaed in front of Congress? Don't you have to tell the truth? Guys, they're just, and I'm not saying to you guys, but they're just going to fucking lie. It's pretty simple. It's not, it doesn't, I hate to say it, but just to give you guys an idea, I'm a very small consultant contractor compared to these other huge guys. And I've just gone into this world that I'm just sort of getting my feet wet. And I can already tell you guys from my experience, no one's giving anything up without a fight.
Not only that, but the people that do have the knowledge already in the position of being not necessarily scared, but more threatened already. And I'm circling this back to the conversation, Dave, you and I had with Dan Winter.
Sure.
And I saw you push a couple points on him. Like, and one of them was, if you needed to build this in your backyard, how much would this cost? And he said, well, we already tried that once before, and the military guys didn't like it that much. He steered the conversation away towards an education process.
This is where it gets interesting. And what I'm saying here is, I'm not happy to say what I'm saying here, just to be completely open, but there's a lot of them in there that think that the public doesn't deserve or is not smart enough to even know about it, let alone see it physically. And I'm not sitting here saying that I am compared to the public or what have you. I've been gracious enough to, I'll be honest, if this were 5-10 years ago, I'd probably either be in prison right now or dead given the circumstances. But I was fortunate enough where in fairness, these contractors have had to lighten up in terms of who they're letting in. It's kind of like an old guard. They have to kind of give up some of what they used to consider super strict rules. But the one thing, in my opinion, that I think what we're seeing is a group that wants to, and I say this with honest intentions, a group that wants to disclose non-human intelligence or potential non-human intelligence, whether it's us, whatever it is, whether it's, breakaway civilization, us from the future, or not us at all, whatever, or a mix of it maybe. But I think they're trying to do that while focusing on the metamaterials, not to detract, but to distract. What I mean by that is, I have nothing against metamaterials, but I think they're trying to basically have disclosure while also keeping the contractor, military, industrial guys happy. And what I mean by that is not telling people that you don't need metamaterials to do this stuff.
It's kind of like showing a caveman a post hole digger, right?
You said it perfectly, Tony. And here's the thing: I'm not saying anyone is doing this happily or diabolically. I think since the cover-up began many decades ago, it's only gotten worse and worse in terms of. I think if there is going to be a disclosure, it's not going to be a let's all sing by the fire. I think it's going to be, how can we make this as least shitty of a disclosure as possible? Because of over the years, all the lies, and people are going to say, what, you've known this for how long now, and so on and so forth. And I think the final wall to knock down is going to be bringing the tech out. If and I say this, if the tech ever comes out, and let's just say hypothetically, I may or may not have been cleared to see some things. And if I had seen those things, then I can tell you now, these people will fight tooth and nail to keep it secret. And I'm not trying to say that negatively. I'm just being as real as I can be from where I stand. I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. But that's what I'm. Yeah.
I was gonna say I've had similar encounters. I've spoken about how I was with the Advanced Radiation Weapon Defense Technology guys.
Right.
And they're basically like, "I'm surprised you're alive."
Well,
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny because the first heat I took on this was after I interviewed Louis Elizondo the first time, and the aura, I just absorbed things from his aura. And
right.
I said afterwards, I think Lou is doing a good job, and he's doing a job, and he's doing it well. And people were like, "What are you talking about? What does that mean?" And I said, "I think he's doing a job, and he's doing it well." And it may be that 20 years from now we find out that what he was doing was necessary.
There's a lot of things that's come to my attention that I think, to add to your point, Tony, I think the efforts of him and others are genuine. I think, however, people like that are juggling exactly the things we described. We also have to consider that if you disclose this tech, then you got China and Russia and Iran watching us like crazy. Like, for example, I know, for example, certain scientists that when they do live streams, I won't say the name, but or the names, they have to tell the people hosting the stream not to put the words Navy or Air Force or something like that in the title associated with their name, because Chinese and Russian and Iranian spies or spooks go watch the stream just to see what science they're going to talk about. So it's not easy. To your point, Tony, it's a very fine line. I honestly think we're going to see a lot of people like Elizondo and other people's efforts come to fruition in the long run. I don't think we're going to see, if we do in the short run, sure. But I think what you're seeing there is from those guys a much more strategic objective. It's not just, hey, let's drag the craft out of Lockheed and take a picture for the New York Times or the BBC to tell the world. It's far more complex than that, in my opinion.
Well, and that's where it circles back to the whole concept of an education, is necessary in order to release certain technologies, right? Because if we're concerned that like Iran or Russia or China is going to take this technology and then use it with bad intent, well, that's not going to happen. But if we have a re-education process that takes a couple years, then maybe it'll happen once we've all kind of learned to find our happy centers.
I think they have to do things as simple as figuring out how to do distribution. Like say a new energy source. You can't do that overnight. You can't distribute that energy across America or the world.
I can tell you that there's some that I'm familiar, some people. So I'm so sorry to cut you off, Tony. There's some people that have proposed to the Middle East, like the Saudis and others, trying to find a way to underwrite a development so that you can have, for example, you can slowly phase off of oil. And I know there's a business model that's attempted to be pushed now, which is you buy the car, but you rent the battery. So you never own the battery of the car, and you're paying monthly, like a Netflix subscription for your, not unlimited, but abundant amount of electrical power.
That reminds me of a company called SEG Magnetics.
Out
of Texas.
Searle?
It's an offshoot of Searle. It's like his number one student basically founded in Texas, creating a company called SEG Magnetics.
What's his name there? I know him.
I forget his name off the top of my head.
Jason Ravelli.
I think it was a different name. Started with an H, Henderson maybe, or something of that nature.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of someone. Okay.
Yeah, but basically, he throttled down his SEG device to not go anti-grav, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that have, and I'm being blunt about it, and I don't say this just because it was, I've had experiences in that field as well, but blatantly there have been guys where when you ramp up to a certain threshold in the laboratory where basically there's detectors, people have gotten knocks on the doors. I'm not kidding at all. So yeah.
I guess I'll cancel that experiment this weekend in my shop.
It has to be extremely high power. It's like it has to be enough to be like surpass the power of a house, for example.
So my homemade nuclear power plant won't work.
I mean, hey,
I'm
I'm
going
not
to get myself in trouble.
Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm running late for this. Has been an absolute.
Hey, will you promise to come back sometime?
I give you my word. I'm coming back. I promise.
Okay, because
Yes.
I had about 20 questions.
Oh wow. Okay.
We talked about AI too much.
We can set something up for next weekend or the latest the following weekend if you like. Like you can use this on a live stream, so you can use it as record that I said that.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave. I'll be in contact.
Alexei, brother, it was a pleasure as always. Patrick, sir, it was a pleasure to meet you. And Tony, I love you, man. Thank you so much.
Me too, man.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, man.
See ya.
Take it easy.
I remember when I first met Dave years ago, I said to myself, this guy is going to be, he'll be, what do you call it? Not abducted by the CIA, but sought after. What's the word what am I trying to say? Anyway, I'm speechless. But anyway, no, just recruited. Why can't I come up with the simple word recruit when I want to? It's crazy. Patrick can explain the psychology behind that. Why you can't come up with simple words, but you can come up with complicated ones.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like Dave a lot, and we have very similar lines of thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, yeah. And that's where like it really does circle, in my opinion, right? Always making that clear. The re-education is more important at this time versus releasing the technology. So once the re-education happens, then we can release the technologies. And by re-education, I mean like people actually learn to be happy with their lives. Like wars on Earth stop. Now we can travel.
The thing about it is they didn't have to bring out the videos in 2017. I still go back to that point where, because I've seen these phases come and go since I was 12 years old, you know, because that's when I first got interested, when I was a teen and had my little experience. But you know, it boggles my mind a little bit where they could have done all this behind the scenes. They didn't have to have the whole campaign to, you know what I mean? They didn't have to have this campaign. They could have just done all this behind the scenes. If
they did it all behind the scenes. So I'm just gonna make random numbers right now because I don't have any actual polls or data. But let's say before 2017, how many people actually believed in UFO and UAP? Right, I'm gonna say maybe 5-10% of the population. Maybe now, since they've started doing that, it's closer to 20%. Because I know there's still a lot of people that are not about it.
But that's my point.
I used to not. That's the case for me. I used to be a hardcore skeptic because of folks like Michael Shermer and like the Fermi paradox and the Drake equation and all that. And there's just so much coverage and so much being done in Congress. Like I'm watching them talk about, and the way that they're talking about these things, the many obvious cover-ups that seem to be going on.
I don't think that anything Congress is an indicator. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. Yeah,
you know
it's the way that people are talking about. Like
criticizing you. I'm not criticizing you. It's just that I've seen these efforts many times, and it always turns out to be some kind of intelligence effort. You know,
or like a cover-up.
Congress people can be duped just as easily as just me. You know, can be duped. You know, as far as using them to. Some of this could be, here we're trying to convince China and Russia that we have technology that they don't have, and you know what I mean. It doesn't necessarily have to be that they're trying to convince us that the aliens exist or they're visiting. It could be.
If it wasn't for my personal experiences, I would have a hard time believing that the ET aspect of it was completely fake.
I'm not saying I don't believe in life.
You know what I'm saying, right? So
I'm not saying I don't believe in life. I think the fact that there is other life in the universe, that they're taking advantage of that is what I'm trying to say. They're taking.
I agree with that because we've also been developing electrogravitics since 1920.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that more than half of everything we see, if not 95% of everything we see in all those videos, is probably a man-made black project.
To me, anything with lights on it is a man-made. I still don't understand why people think aliens need, headlights on their spaceships.
Right, or why they have red and green navigation lights. Like, you don't need
why?
that.
Why? Why?
So Daniel Boone
Why?
says they want laws to confiscate private technology. I think Congress just had a meeting yesterday or 2 days ago that I watched. It was like a half hour of them talking about writing a new law. I could see like a new law to make it such that they are more transparent, and this may open up a new department, which could just be acting as another way for them to hide information. So they're trying to make the law in a way that it can be easily amended and also very easily interpretable, so it doesn't get caught up in lawyer-style linguistic terminology too much.
And you're
I
absolutely
think
correct with that.
Writing that.
Yeah, when I
I
filed
think-
my patent for my skateboard in 2012 or no 2009, I also filed patents for space technologies. Those disappeared. One of them was a satellite jumper. It was a machine that could jump from one satellite to another and connect to the communication systems.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that concept disappeared, right?
That's-
So like,
I just think we have to be careful about thinking
Mhm.
that anything government is going to do is. I'm not that skeptical. I know I sound very skeptical, but I mean, any kind of regulation that you're going to see is not going to be necessarily that beneficial to the normal average Joe. You know,
Yeah.
it's like Daniel Boone saying, I'm still suspect that they're trying to proprietize, technology to a degree, and the normal. I mean, I give open source AI probably another few years, and then I think it's going to go away. I really think it will, if it gets to a point where Congress thinks they can regulate it to a point where, the average person.
I hope not. I feel like with the United States, we have this emphasis on the free speech, and I believe that's probably going to play into the way that people have access to these technologies. At least I'm hoping when that's the case.
I mean,
yeah,
I hope so, but I think part of this effort, the ET effort, is to create this. We're already seeing language like catastrophic disclosure, right? What's that all about? If that's not fear mongering, it's fear mongering, so they can create national security laws that suck everything into, that pull everything away from the public. And,
I think the closest thing in our modern time that relates to what we're talking about now is Bitcoin. So like Bitcoin came out, but now they're trying to basically completely regulate Bitcoin. They're trying to create something called the Fed coin. They're trying to get everyone on these digital currencies, but regulated through government.
Oh, cryptocurrency.
Yeah, so I think that AI might, in a way, the use of AI technologies could be very similar.
I mean, I know people are gonna say this is not true, but we took out Saddam Hussein because he wanted to start selling oil with was it rubles or whatever? I mean, anytime you start to anytime someone wants to compete, create a currency that competes with the dollar, you're going to see trouble, And I honestly, I know this is very conspiratorial, but I always thought the NSA or someone would take out, Bitcoin. That's why I never heavily invested in it, because I think eventually it'll go away,
Well, cryptocurrency, the idea of it being like encrypted currency is essentially the etymology there. So this is meant to be like a middle finger to banks, as far as I understand it. It's got like the S dollar sign, but like an X through it. That's the symbol for cryptocurrency. And so it's essentially, it's taking the dollar or like shifting the dollar from being based on oil or gold to confidence, like having confidence in a company or having confidence in an artist to continue doing what they do. Kind of like we were talking about earlier, artisan, with the idea that like the artisan will be able to keep selling their human-based things because people have confidence in that single artist to keep putting out really good things,
right?
Or really good products. So that's getting us away from the idea of having attachments at all to any physical banks and government intervention in those banks.
That's the nice story, though.
That's the mission, but yeah,
that's the nice side of it.
Fluctuates based on that.
The dark side of it is anarchy. I think it was created as an anarchist move, a strictly anarchist move, and so then more power to them. I'm just saying you're going to lose in the end if you start, if the U.S. government starts to see competition. This is why you see the U.S. government coming out with their own digital currency or whatever. I anyway, again, most of the things I talk about are I have no really basis for them. They're just my intuition speaking. So
No, it's both of those at play. I mean, it's a noble endeavor and a good idea, but it also can cause a lot of problems with anarchy. People use it in the black market. Like that's the main key to get to the black market.
yeah.
Cryptocurrency.
Well, I mean, you got terrorists using cryptocurrency. I mean, look at what they just shut down. Hamas's coins, and who else? The guys in Yemen got their cryptocurrency taken. I guess it's a good way to trap money. Honestly, if you want to trap people's money, you could allow it and then take it. Lock it up.
Well, it's secure too. It's like triple secured, however you want to call it. Like you have your own personal wallet. That's your own personal bank, basically, and you have a set of words that you are given for your personal wallet, and then you can keep those words like in a physical safe that only you have access to, and therefore no one could ever possibly have them.
Oh, I know. I have a
backup
MetaMask account. I understand, but you can. But none of that is so locked up so tight. I mean, you can go read the articles where their wallets were confiscated. So there's always going to be some kind of back door. You know what I mean?
That's true.
I mean, I understand it's a peer-to-peer network and all that, and it has, you know what I mean? I kind of basically understand it. I remember when it first came out, everybody was hyped, and so I followed it for a long time. I don't completely understand it, but I understand it enough to know that the dangers, are surrounding it as far as investing lots of money.
It's basically stocks.
I think the whole UAP technology blowing up. What is Daniel Boone saying now? Changing laws in Congress to be able to. And again, I'm a design build contractor, but and I don't want to ever seem like I'm making claims that I have knowledge about. This is my intuition talking. My but my intuition's always served me pretty well, so I'm sticking to it.
Well, what was it, Daniel? What Daniel just said, I think, is actually somewhat accurate too. It seemed like they were trying to go fishing, right? They wanted to see what they could figure out by going public as well. So by going public, it allowed other people to come out and say, hey, we have these things, or for laws to be passed to find out what has been happening, but then to just, again, confiscate it, put it under the rug, and make the most out of what they can.
Well, that's the silly part about trying to get skiffs, I'm sure, the CIA or whoever would love the Department of Defense would love to get all of this stuff into a skiff. They'd love to get everybody on these congressional committees into a skiff and just suck up all the information, right? Just vacuum up all the goods. And so,
well, people have a right to know.
We do have a right to know.
Power to the people.
Power to the people. I'm not saying that I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying you got to be careful of putting too much trust in government, because their whole thing is keeping secrets. That's where their power lays.
I mean, I've thought about this for a while, and it really is sad that I keep coming to this conclusion. Like, our government intentionally keeps us sick and stupid, because every election cycle we vote for better healthcare, better education systems, and yet both sides are denied that for like decades now. We haven't seen significant improvement in that. We have amazing healthcare doctors and amazing, like, some of the best medical equipment in the world, but if you want access to that, well, our healthcare system ranks from like 25th to like 30th in the world for like the past 10 years or so. It's been around like 28 or 28th. Yeah, it's really, really sad. Like, case in point is me. I have Crohn's disease, and even if I had a colostomy bag, I still would not qualify as disabled or be able to receive disability checks. Now, my friend that does receive disability checks, he can only make so much money a month. So you're literally not allowed to achieve and rise above a certain pay range if you have a disability. That is intentionally keeping people sick, if I've ever heard it before. So our government is obviously intervening. They're obviously making decisions, whether it's conscious or not, to keep the system running and keep it safe and keep it functioning as it has been. This is like traditionalism or conservatism or whatever you want to call it. It's not moving Chesterton's fence until we know what's behind it. Like that's usually the political example. So that applies to UAP technology and that applies to AI. I mean, I don't agree with it, and I think people do have the right to have access to as much information as possible. But I see the motivations for not wanting to move Chesterton's fence. I see the motivations for not wanting to reveal too much to the public. I mean, these are like, especially the technology of AI, like it's extremely dangerous in the wrong hands, and that's going to take a long time to regulate. I don't think we're going to do it. I don't think we can write the regulations for it fast enough because it's going to get spread to the public.
Well, but you even saw Elon and Sam Altman talking similar language on this, though. It's almost like they were afraid of what private entities would come up with, right? Like they were afraid of it going out, somehow haywire. But I don't know. I always think there will be checks and balances, even even on the internet. That there could be checks and balances put in place.
Yeah, I just think we can do it. I just think it's like kind of, it takes longer to write the laws than it does to keep up with the progress of society or anti-progress, whatever you want to call it.
Well, no, that's the danger, because that's the danger I'm talking about, is that any law that's created would just be a full stopgap.
Right.
Instead of, it wouldn't have details. It would just be like, no more open source, no more, you know what I mean? Maybe you have to have
AI. Like we could
can
use
you
AI
imagine?
to help us.
I have to have a license in the state of Tennessee to be a contractor, right? What if they developed a license that you had to have before you could own an artificial intelligence, a language model? I can actually see our government doing that.
Well, I think you made a really interesting point, Artisan. Like maybe the reason why they wanted to slow things down is because they realized they just gave people the power to surpass their own technology. Like, you get what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, I'm working with a guy who's one of my son's friends, who's like a whiz bang programmer. And, I mean, not that I can see where, not me, but him, could, and certainly somebody like Dave or you guys could create something that was very creative. As far
AI,
as,
AI could put Amazon out of business, right? In a way. So like, just say you have prompt or you have access to an AI and you say, hey, I'm a startup company and my goal is to put Amazon out of business. How do I do it? It'll
I think there's probably a lot of physical restraints to that, like infrastructure. I mean, imagine trying to compete with Amazon's distribution system. I mean, we have a warehouse that you could fit half the city of Chattanooga in. An Amazon distribution center.
No, it wouldn't be as easy as just typing in a prompt, but now you have a very competitive edge and a very competitive opponent because you're literally working against some dude who's just sitting there with AI.
Yeah.
Well, there's physical restraints to that. Yeah. I mean, the AI could come up with the most beautiful plan in the world, but it couldn't build. There's no brick and mortar, infrastructure. There's no trucks for delivery. There's no people. There's no, you know what I mean?
Well, the AI itself could help us write better laws. It could help us like fill in the gaps where our laws are like unsubstantial or like they're just catching up a lot of times. And I mean, yeah, it's already extremely powerful technology, and I'd hate to see it restricted. At least like more restricted than it is now.
I can see myself that maybe being the only reason that I go to the dark web. If for some reason they want to restrict AI, I can see myself going to like a black market to get a language model, something that I could work on, that I could train myself.
Right.
You know what I mean? If I had to, because for what I want to do with it, it's very simple. But and that may be something they look at doing, licensing a certain how do they rank the language models based on I guess speed and what's the measurement of ranking that they're based on? What is it, Patrick? they'll say this
it's,
model is blah blah blah, and this model is blah blah blah.
They're not nodes. It's
not tokens.
It's like blocks of text or something.
Packets?
Yeah, token. I think it's token.
Yeah, it's token. That's it.
Yeah. So maybe they limit, like as a design build contractor, I can only have, I have to license.
Well, yeah. So that's
I can
another.
literally see this happening if we don't keep government.
Well, so that's another natural restriction that Shapiro and others also talk about. The idea that this isn't correct, but you can kind of think of it this way: like each token requires this amount of compute. So the GPT-4 is like running on like 250,000 tokens or something. It's like 1,000 times more than what it used to have. And to have access to that, you got to have access to a large supercomputer facility. This is why OpenAI beat Google to this first, and now they're in competition. But it was because OpenAI had originally bought a ton of those computers for that purpose, for fueling extra compute upon compute upon compute for these algorithms that they have developed. And it was that common that with their special algorithms that Google still hasn't matched yet. Like they're still behind. And also, yeah, interesting stuff. I had some stuff pulled up here. Recently, OpenAI fired Sam Altman. They gave no explanation for it. This was apparently precipitated by a mysterious letter. The words "threat to humanity" were included in that letter. This was reported by Reuters. And the whole thing was like, go ahead.
I was just going to say something about there was rumors that he, they had developed, they had reached this AGI point, that was that was the discussion I was talking about, where Altman and before that happened, before he got fired, he and Elon were talking about the dangers of like the plebeians having access to OpenAI, open source. And that's what kind of ticked me off a little bit, because here I am just trying to have fun with it. I'm not trying to destroy the world.
Yeah.
And they're wanting to put their little thumb on things, right? They didn't realize what they were doing themselves. They were going to put the big thumb on little people,
Well, it could be. I'm afraid that it might go that route if we want to keep people stupid. Like we're not teaching people what they need to learn in the public education systems, or at least we're not teaching self introspection and self-awareness habits and proper communication abilities and things like that. We're letting people run wild and teaching them to sit in a chair, preparing them for the business world and to be cogs in the machine. The temptation to limit people's access to ways to expand their knowledge and expand their self-awareness is already pretty high. That being said, I mean, personally, most of the growth that I've made in my own personal development came around age 26 and 27, once I started taking online courses in CBT and just watching a ton of YouTube videos. Like, it's mostly just free access to any YouTube videos that I could possibly want to watch, unrestricted by the government in many ways. Google does own YouTube now, and I don't know what ties they may have with our government, but I don't see them like imposing anything on YouTube anytime soon. If they wanted to go that route, they probably would have done that a long time ago. Because 10 years ago, you had access to things that would completely make you question your government and make you question everything about your reality and existence. And yeah, anything you want to learn is on YouTube. Still, it's like that.
I think that part of government that is dangerous is pretty secure in itself, because they know that elected politicians are just short timers. It's like people like they're not that really concerned about people like Tim Burchett, because he may be out of office in a few years, while the lifers that are actually running the thing, in the intelligence world, the Department of Defense or whatever, those are lifers. The people who are actually holding the secrets are lifers, right? They're not elected politicians.
Yeah. I guess it's hard to tell.
What do you mean? Well, no, the only people who are elected are the Congress, people in Congress, the Senate, the House. We even have judges. We even appoint judges for life, so there's not that many elected officials on the national level, right? If you look at the size of our government, the size of our government is like 2/3 of the workforce. Maybe it's just a third. I need to look that up. But it grows, it's growing exponentially. Eventually half the country will be working for government, and our gross domestic product will probably drop like crazy. But
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I do believe that we need, like Hobbes' Leviathan, the concept of some kind of overseeing entity that can kind of provide a safety net and provide people with what they need access to, and at least provide like the bottom tiers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I also I have to give caveats from referencing that. I don't recommend that as a therapy practice, but that structure of having the main tiers of like safety, security, guaranteed food, guaranteed shelter, guaranteed. I mean, this should be obvious in the 21st century to me, in a country as successful as it is today. That would be hard to see the citizens just making for themselves. Like we already have, it's like intergenerational. Like we already have governments acting in the past that need to uphold the status that they are now. To radically eliminate that would be catastrophic, and to radically alter that in a progressive way would probably also be quite like we were talking about before. You can't have too much change at the beginning. You can't instantly up the minimum wage to $20 an hour, because that would cause a lot of shifts and things. We have to do like gradual changes. But this technology is accelerating way faster than anyone's ever had to deal with. So we got to step on the gas in that regard.
No, I agree with the safety net. I mean, I think we're past the point where back in the day, like when I was a kid, churches, and nonprofits took care of the local community. But we're kind of past that point now to where the church has been kind of not destroyed, but it's sort of pushed aside in its traditional responsibility. So it's almost like now you have to have government as provide that safety net. But and I would like to see some of this, some of this budget money that we keep not being able to account for go towards bettering that system. I'm not sure how many top secret laser programs we need that aren't accounted for. What is the Pentagon fails its audit every year by what, trillions of dollars?
Didn't just George Santos just got expelled from Congress a couple of days ago, or yesterday?
I haven't seen that. What was he?
Yeah. They caught him on spending government money on freaking Botox and just.
Oh yeah. That I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, they completed it. I listened to the trial, and he's, I think, the first Republican to be expelled.
Oh,
so that's
Kim will be coming back on the 20th, so that'll be interesting. Well, do you all have any other cool subjects to talk about?
Well, what do you plan on talking about with Tim? I mean, he was presenting a 64-page amendment or law or something, right, to help get UAP transparency, but it seems like it's being completely shut down right now.
Yeah,
I was going to ask him about that, and honestly, I usually do a couple of 2 or 3 hours of research on each guest. Like I tried to do it on Dave, but I didn't know if he was actually coming. He kind of surprised me today, to be honest with you. I didn't know he was coming until just this morning. And then I was like, let me talk Patrick and Alexei. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, so to answer your question, Alexei, I usually do show prep and then try to come up with a list of questions. I do actually have. Let me show right quick, if y'all don't mind, a place where we can where you can present questions.
Yep,
Eventually,
that's right. I wanted to say real quick, I guess, while you're doing this, is that I think most people are missing the point of the UAP disclosure.
Let me just show this right quick, and then let me finish this point, and then you can go, since I'm here. I'm going to go to the PiFiShow.com, and then you go to the show menu, and you can go down here to hot tips and questions, and you can submit your questions for Tim here on that form right there. I'll put the link in the description. Okay, I'm sorry, Alexei, go ahead.
I think I completely spaced out at this point.
I'm sorry. I was going to space out if I didn't get that.
I had a fun point, but no. I think
You
most
said the
people are
point about
missing
the
point of
UAPs.
the UAP disclosure, because I remember what I was going to say. They're focusing so much on what's happening in Congress and what you could say government officials are releasing as far as the step-by-step process to disclosure. Like, I'm on Twitter, I'm on X, whatever you want to call it, and all I see is a regurgitation of the last thing a government official has said. You know, I think they're missing the big picture, because they're just listening to what the government is saying every step of the way. They're focusing on legislation, they're focusing on laws, versus you could say the natural way of reality, or versus the nature of reality, the physics that comes from this. Like, there's a lot of attention being put on laws versus actual physics and truths.
I think a lot of the value that I'm seeing from some of the hearings, when the public is allowed to question Congress, is and like in the most recent meeting, is what the government is not saying. Like, because we're allowed to keep asking questions with our wonderful free speech laws, we're able to ask more and more precise questions, where we're able to leave the option for them to say something and set it up for them to be like, if they don't say something here, there's obviously something that they're withholding. And we're seeing more, like, that's getting more precise. If that's a registered process, or if that's an examined process, it's getting precise.
Not only that, I agree with what you're saying, but not only that, but also which members of Congress are the ones that are closing down the bills, right? It's like, this guy voted against the bill. Well, why is that guy voting against the bill?
The only interface that we have, though, to ask those questions is the representatives that represent our districts, right? There's no interface that you can just use to ask questions, right?
Other than ChatGPT.
No, I'm talking about Patrick was talking about asking our government questions.
No, of course.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, you need to bypass them. We were talking about, like, maybe AI can help bypass some of these things by gathering the bits of knowledge.
It doesn't keep up with current events, though. I mean, it's just its cutoff date was what? I think the most recent was 2022, right? So it doesn't have.
It depends on which model you have, right?
GPT-4 was like 2 months ago, I think.
What's that, Patrick? What did you say?
I think GPT-4 is on 2 months ago. Although it depends on the subject matter too. Like, I'll look into medical neuroscience, and that's usually really up to date. And then other, like, psychology-based things tend to be older.
Let me see. What is the cutoff date?
It may not be GPT-4. I might be thinking of
I'm curious. I've never checked GPT-4.
Well,
2022.
what you were mentioning at the beginning of the conversation was that, like, Patrick has knowledge, I have knowledge, Dave has knowledge, you have knowledge. Maybe AI is good for putting all those bits of knowledge together. And so when you consider doing that same type of process with everything that's been presented by Congress, or everything that's been presented through the DoD or whatnot, what I'm getting at is, you could see how AI could be putting together pieces of the puzzle that aren't necessarily typically thought about.
Right.
I don't know. It's so fluid. Like Patrick was saying, things are so fluid, and machines have to be trained. You would have to train a model on a daily basis so that it could keep up, right? It would be even difficult. You would have to have someone feeding the news into the, training it every night before, at midnight or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And maybe at some point we'll get to that point where there's some aggregate site for news that gets, where the language model gets trained, and retrained every night. Can you imagine the computing power, though?
Yeah.
You would have to have for that.
Well, it would need to be able to see the current state of the internet.
What's that?
Right? It would need to be able to see the current state of the internet, kind of like a Wayback Machine. and see how the internet is evolving.
I'm
for all
kind of
the
hoping
code.
it would. I'm kind of hoping there would be some oversight way to. I honestly, my biggest hesitation I wouldn't want any AI having access to the internet. I think the data is going to have to always be monitored. I think language models are always going to have to be trained to a certain extent with control. The data is going to have to be controlled. Can you imagine the dark web? All the crazy. You could see a corruption of AI if that happened. I think there's where your corruption is going to come from, the internet. even those these extensions you see of Chrome that combine with Chat GPT, that data is only it's not GPT is not retrained with that data. That like it scans the internet for the information and it presents it to you, but it doesn't turn around and retrain the model with it. It's not now. It doesn't. That's a misconception of people. Huh?
Yeah, that's what they want to do with Auto GPT, if I'm not mistaken. And that's like we're talking about relevance realization and comprehension of what the thing is saying, or what the language model is typing up. And I mean, some people, like, it's still up in the air as to whether or not that's what's going on if we reach relevance realization.
Well, I mean, the models that most of the people like I just asked GPT-4 what was its data cutoff, and it was January 2022. So unless, you know what I mean, it's not being retrained on a daily basis.
Right.
It's not. It may be maybe there's a private model that is, or there's some sort of ongoing effort to do it, but the one that we have access to isn't.
Yeah, it might be Bing, the AI assistant from Bing. I think is up to date because it's straight from Google, or it's straight from Bing.
I mean, you would have a quantum computer to train a model like that every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the whole thing has to be, the way I understand it, the whole thing has to be rebuilt from scratch every time, right?
What do you mean? Like each interaction that you have with it?
I'm trying to think of what do I mean.
I don't think so. I think that they could create an algorithm that makes it update in real time based off of like a logarithmic understanding of general consensus reality. I once proposed this to a professor at MIT when I was visiting my brother. I was like, well, why don't you guys just do like a logarithmic type of interaction? This bot talks to this bot, but it has a belief in this direction. Now when the two interact, they somewhat pace to a center point. So
it's kind of like
create.
That's like Bayesian reasoning. Yeah, you can have a Bayesian approach.
Like very simple reasoning models for the AI to follow when it comes to new information.
Of course, well, that's the Bayesian approach or Bayesian reasoning, but that commits the logical fallacy appeal to consensus. So
let me tell you why I think what I'm talking about is true. So here's my little open AI assistant, right? And you can go and you can tell it. I can configure it.
I'm gonna try to fix my camera.
You can configure it to. I can upload files to it, right? Those files are just accessed by a local. I'm not retraining this model right here. It's just accessing the files that I upload to gain data. It's not retraining the entire model. You see what I mean?
Definitely.
You guys still there?
Yeah, sorry. Patrick walked away at the same time I did, I think.
Oh, well, we'll just end the show then.
No, I'm still here. Hold on.
Y'all are going to leave?
About the release.
My bad. I'm trying to fix my computer or my camera.
Here's what I'm talking about, okay? This is my little artist AI helper that I'm trying to configure for my little project, right? Okay, so I can set it to where I can add files, okay? Those files are just accessed this model right here is not retrained with the files that I upload. It's just like a local database that is accessed when it's needed, or I guess, you know what I mean? They're not retraining this model with the information. I wouldn't want to pay for the computing power that would take, right? Every time I upload a file, and I have this thing I'm working on where, I'm trying to upgrade this. Let me get rid of all this crap.
Weren't you working with programming models with the Galileo project?
Yeah, we were working on that kind of stuff, but this is mine right here. And when I get done with it, I'm going to upload it to mine, and it will. So after I upload it, it will access that information. But I'm not retraining this model right here. Whenever it will scan these files, whenever one of my users asks it a question, okay, it will scan these files, but it's not retraining this model every time. I wouldn't want to pay for that. It would cost probably $100,000 for me to retrain this model. I don't know what it costs. Yeah. Now, eventually, but
I think the price is going to drop quick because everyone in the world and every business everywhere is going to want quick and affordable access to these technologies. Yeah. But again, that assumes that we have access from the government.
Here's my little hobby side.
Well, and that's why I think Artisan's point about needing a degree or some type of certificate to access the AI is actually really viable, or actually really plausible, because I'm not trying to downplay anything I do, Artisan, or anything you do, but like, how hard is it to draw a picture of a house? I'm not saying it's easier by any means, but I'm saying the thing that separates you from other builders is you have a contractor's license, right? So the fact that you have a contractor's license now you are the center of that propagation. And so I think that you were right when you say that AI may eventually go to a contractor's license.
Yeah, I could see that. And that's like outside of academia. Like you wouldn't have to go to college to get a degree in how to use these systems. You just got to show that you're going to use it for good, basically.
Well, that's where they control.
The people use it for a viable business, like for something that's going to be a productive business that contributes to society.
Tell me what the rise of your roof is going to be. Tell me how many feet it's going to be.
4 feet.
4 feet.
Let's say the whole building is 32 feet tall with a 4-foot roof rise. And
how wide is the building?
It's 40 feet by 100 feet long.
So the span will be 20 feet for the rafter.
I'll show you what I drew up, and let's see what it drew. Like within 5 seconds, And it has rock fascia.
You can also make spelling errors.
I didn't prompt it very well, but we'll see.
No, I was going to say, like, the less specific you can be, that also helps these models train. Like, they have to that means they have to interpret more from what you're saying. Like, I make a lot of spelling errors intentionally when I mess with these things.
Oh, that's one thing.
Or I just leave my spelling errors. I don't correct them.
Oh, I didn't even. Oh man, I
apologize if I didn't meet your expectations. Is there anything else I can assist you with? So polite.
I didn't put the prompt in the right place. This is actually the helper right here. What would the rafter length be if the span was 20 feat?
Nice, you got the spelling errors in there too.
I know. I can't see my keyboard. I can't see my keyboard because I have my laptop folded over. And I never learned the keyboard. What would the rafter length be if the span and the rise was 4 feet? There you go.
The Pythagorean theorem. Look at that.
Yeah, 20 feet, 3, and I can kind of tell that that's 20 feet, 20.396 feet.
That doesn't help a contractor. You need 20 feet and. What is it?
Well, okay. How about what about
convert that, right?
Feet and inches?
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 feet. I was going to say 0.3 feet is 4 inches, 496. So, but it's 20 feet, 4 3/4 inches. Isn't that cool?
That's extremely useful.
So
Yeah,
what I'm trying to do is just since the show's I've turned it into a boring show, might as well make it really boring. What I'm trying to do is add these functions where we take our basic helper, our little bot, and also prompt you to do this thing that's required on construction project, is fill out this form. And what it would do is it would prompt you for this information, your daily log form, and it would automatically write it to the database. And then I can already do this manually. I've already got this set up to where I can fill these in, and then I can go download the information for my pay request on my projects. What I'm trying to do is totally automate it, so anyway, that's my little playing. Where's my stop screen thing? Here we go. So you can see why I would be really upset if they started to try to regulate. My little playtime would go away.
Yeah, I could see them, like, if they were to regulate it, that would be something that would stay. If you had to get a license or a certification as a contractor to use that would be feasible. It's such a useful technology too. Like, I've radically expanded my knowledge and
I mean, but
learning.
The thing about it is, as a contractor, I already have to pay fees. I have to every 2 years I have to re-up my license with the state, and it's a pain in the butt. You have to do all financial statements and all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? The regulation. When I first started in construction in 1978, there was no licensing laws. There were no business laws. In Tennessee especially, you could just your word was your word. You went and did a job. People paid you. If you didn't do a good job, that word got around, right? And you didn't get work. So nature kind of took care of itself. And government's like, oh, we got to get our little fee. We got to get our part of this. We can't have private business going on without getting our part.
This is kind of a random question. Artisan, were you grandfathered into a license, or did you have to go take tests?
I had to. No, nobody was grandfathered in.
In Florida, I think that people were grandfathered in. Like, because I know that the architectural firm I worked for, when it came to the boats and stuff,
it has to do with license. Okay, so it has to do with license limit. Like, they grandfathered in people for $25,000 or less per contract. But if you wanted to do anything above that, which I don't like doing a bunch of little jobs. I like doing a couple of big ones a year. It's more fun. And I don't like dealing with that many customers. I only deal with 2 or 3 customers a year. See, I don't have to deal with 50 customers a year. And so on that level, you had to go take the state license. We literally had to have a business and law exam that we had to take. And it was down and dirty too. I studied for months for that thing. I passed it, but it was tough.
That's where I think the guy that I used to work for was grandfathered in.
Now, Florida might be different. Every state came up with their. Florida may have been. Florida is a pretty decent state, right? In some ways, it's even more conservative than Tennessee. And so it may have grandfathered in more people, right? But what they did in Tennessee was say, okay, if you want to do, small projects, we'll grandfather you. But if you want to do $1 million projects, you're going to, you know what I mean? They didn't want just anybody doing large projects, so you had to go through the licensing process. 2024 is my 20th year as a licensed contractor.
Right.
Before that was just guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, I guess you can't just have people building like skyscrapers without a license or something, but yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
there has to be
believe it or
yeah.
not, the cathedrals were built without license. So
Yeah, fair enough. Well, so they
Yeah.
were employed by the church governments, or a lot of them were employed by like the combination of the church and government that existed before the
they were
Enlightenment
commissioned.
of the 17th century and all that.
I mean, back in those days, stonemasons were like artists. They were commissioned. It was like commissioning art to commission a cathedral, or a pyramid. The stonemasons were like sages or something. They were looked at as like spiritual people. If you could build a
Right.
pyramid, you were like, ooh, or a cathedral was like,
Yeah.
ooh. That's where all the myths come from the masons. The stone guilds, the stonemason guilds were the original, guilds that turned into the sort of underground mason. That's where it all came from. That's why
And
you
now we
see
have licensed contractors.
that's why you see the symbology of the masonry is the compass and the whatever. I forgot
And
exactly
of course,
what
all
it
our
is.
buildings now are like they're all modern, blocky, or like if they're creative, they're like, well, some of the creative models are pretty sweet too. Like the new skyscrapers that we see that take account for the wind resistance and like the buckling that buildings
Yeah.
will undergo. Like
Yeah.
the way they work around that, like some of them are like curved in China. Those are really cool.
Well, some of those like buildings in Japan or places that are earthquake prone actually have huge hydraulic, systems that allow the building
Right.
to move, the foundations, the whole thing move. Those are pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about building that.
Patrick, I have a random question. I'm not trying to take the conversation in a completely different direction, but I notice you have like a whole bunch of bamboo behind you right now. And you've got like
Yeah.
nets sticking. What's going on there?
He's a ninja.
That's those are projects that most of those are didgeridoos that
Okay.
I make off of them.
Oh man,
They're
Awesome.
hard.
Didgeridoo.
They're really hard to make. I gave
know-
it up like a couple years ago because it's
what I
have to
found out
roast
about Patrick?
for like ever.
Patrick only lives probably like 10 miles from me.
Yeah, we live really close by.
He literally, when he
Hilarious.
moved, I thought he was moving farther away from me. He literally moved closer. I mean, like with it, I was asking him for his address so I could send him a mug. Was it a mug or a t-shirt? Anyway, and he gave me his address, and I was like, "What? I know where that road is."
Yeah, what are the
Hit the
chances,
road.
right?
Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to say it. But
Maybe you can incorporate some bamboo into your next job, artisan.
yeah, I was like, I want one of those didgeridoos. I'll trade you a couple of mugs for a didgeridoo.
Word. Yeah, I can hook you up, man. They're yeah. I have a giant one too. I used to make rain sticks as well. Like rain sticks are really fun to make. But you have to dry it out. Like the process it's definitely a ritual. And people charge an arm and a leg for these things because you have to, like, you see how they're all kind of brown. Like the green one in the middle has, well, I'll just show you. So like this, the giant split. It has a huge split down the middle, and that's what happens if you don't dehydrate these things. So you have to like essentially
like kiln dry them.
Well, it's like they have moisture in them, and you have to make sure the moisture gets out slowly and like goes out from the ends of it. And it smells really good. It smells like a baked sweet potato pie, which is just amazing. You do that, so it smells really good, but it takes forever to roast it. So you have to like wet the outside with the wet cloth, and then just slowly like rotate each section, and then like move it through the fire slowly to do that without burning it. Because if you burn it, you can't reverse that. And I've burned a bunch of these too. Like you can't just sand that away. It just burns all the way through it. And yeah, but if you don't do that, it cracks eventually. So that's like part of the process. And then you have to add the like nectar or some kind of like mouthpiece to it. I just drill really well. Like I use a Dremel tool to make a really good mouthpiece in it myself.
I thought you could just go. You have to have a mouthpiece.
Well, so you don't have to. Like the way I make them, if you make the hole the right size, and you can like work with that a bit, but it helps to have like a good, like properly formed thing, usually made out of wax or something. And then the net is just for catching bugs.
Daniel Boone, are you in Australia too? I thought you were in America. Daniel acts like he knows about didgeridoos. The Power of One knows about them. I've always been fascinated by them. I've always
The
thought
reason I
that
asked
most
is I used to make a lot of bamboo. I think we talked about this maybe last time or a couple times ago. Not sure. But I used to do like a lot of lawn and landscape stuff. And I would, one of my jobs was cutting down like 80-foot tall bamboos. And so I would use all the leftover materials to create bow staffs for the martial arts academy that I was working at.
That's awesome.
I know
And if
in
you don't let it
Tennessee,
dry out, right, then like it
in,
splinters open, like you were talking about.
in Tennessee, it's considered an invasive species, isn't it?
There's
Patrick?
over 700. Yeah, there's over 700 species of bamboo, and it's a grass.
Yeah,
It's like a tree grass. You make it. You can make everything out of it. I make chopsticks and forks.
So
and-
Daniel's saying your mistake is you're not letting termites eat out the bamboo.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's one way to do it.
We haven't learned. I can train AI, but I can't train termites.
Use my latest one, polymath part. I just
How
wood
did you
burn
make
it.
the? Oh, your wood burner. I thought you had a laser engraver for a second.
This is like more ergonomic. Like it fits your fingers really well. Yeah,
That's pretty awesome.
they're pretty fun.
Hmm.
They take a little while to
Wonder
make, but I like to use
I know a friend who's trying to build a solar kiln. So you can't. If you kiln dry it, it'll dry out too fast. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to throw it in a kiln because you have to wet the outside. So I guess it stays like moisturized on the outside, and then the moisture on the inside of it kind of like moves down and out through the ends of it. I think is how it works. Yeah. If you don't do that, yeah, it'll split within a few months. But you can use the split wood. Like these are chopsticks I made with split wood. It's not going to focus, but it says tree grass on both sides.
Do you have a website, Patrick?
Yeah, it's patrick-compton.com.
And you have like all those products and things on there?
Yeah, most of them are up for sale, or like up for custom order. These ones,
Yeah,
like there's so many
order.
different species. Like this is a I forget which kind this is, but there's a species that grows like the nodes really close together like this, and that leaves like sections in it, so you can make inch burners and stuff like that with it.
That's not the Buddha
Oh.
bamboo, is it?
That's pretty awesome.
I think it's
Okay.
younger. Like I think this is not a baby, but like a younger plant that just started sprouting.
I had a friend when I was into bushcraft a lot. Well, I still am, but I use a ferro rod, but he can do the friction fire with bamboo. It's pretty awesome. Have you ever
have to
seen
use the
friction fire
string,
done? Huh?
Yeah, you use a string like a bow, or like
Well, I know
yeah.
with the bamboo, they you cut a little hole in the bamboo, and you if you let me look it up.
That's sweet.
This is how the
Yeah, the other thing is just a net. That's for catching bugs.
You just have that stuck inside the didgeridoo?
Yeah. Or that's one of those. That big one's going to be used for more spatulas and cookware, I think. Probably in the spring.
You're just in the process of drying that one out?
Or that one's already split, so I'm going to use it for like spatulas and stuff. I won't use that for didgeridoos. I probably won't ever make didgeridoos again. It's such an ordeal. It takes many hours, but maybe if I run out of these, I will someday.
We'll get to the interesting part here. Oh wait,
Yeah, Power of One says they're
See,
hundreds of dollars
there
in
you go.
Australia.
see, there's a little hole in this thing, and then that helps you develop your ember.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you can just use the little film on the inside. Wow, yeah, that's perfect.
See, you just put a hole in the bottom of the bottom of the curve, and you invert the other piece, and you get your instant friction fire. I've done it with a bow drill before, but I've never done it with bamboo. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy a piece of your dried out bamboo, and then I'm going to try this. I've always wanted to do a bamboo friction
Heck
fire.
yeah. It should smell good too.
And I use I have these little packages of dryer lint I collect, and dryer lint works really well for the.
I used to do
this
that
part.
in Boy Scouts. That's hilarious.
That's what I used to. I was a scoutmaster, and that's how I taught my Boy Scouts to do it. To
That's what they taught me too.
keep
Great.
dryer lint in your little baggie in your pack, because it's just
Yeah,
like
perfect.
instant fire.
Mhm.
It's a real hack.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Good stuff.
Heck
All
yeah,
right, this has been a fun evening, I have to say.
totally.
Termites attack these living eucalyptus trees, removing only the dead heartwood. Oh, okay. That's how you train them. You don't have to train the termites; they just eat the dead part. I was wondering how you train them.
The living
Sign
stuff.
language.
Cool.
Only eat the inside of the sign.
You have to do the little shaking the butt thing that the bees do to communicate to the rest of the
Oh
hive.
yeah, that's awesome. I used to sit and watch my bees for at least an hour. I'd sit there gazing at them. I'm sure they thought I was nuts.
Oh,
They
really?
do their
That'd be
little
cool.
dance in the springtime. They really go crazy in the spring when they've been sitting all winter, and then the flow starts. The nectar flow starts in the spring. They just go crazy. They're dancing all over the place.
Totally.
All right. Well, if y'all had enough for one evening,
Yeah, so
I
I
need
have
to
other things I can
go.
always talk about stuff, but yeah.
I don't really
I
have
think-
anything on my mind.
I'm gonna
but
try.
still hanging out.
I'm gonna try to get us back together whenever Dave is back. We need to get more top secret information out of him. That's my goal. Is to
Heck
get
yeah.
as much top secret information as I can out of him. I want him to slip up and give us the good stuff.
That's where I think that the principles are really important to understand when it comes to these technologies, and why the re-education process is really important. Because with the principles, anybody can build the technologies.
I don't think they're gonna want to share the technology. I don't think they want us to be educated to a certain degree.
Well, that's where certain people have already shared it and are sharing it all the time. But
Yeah.
everybody, like I was mentioning earlier, like everyone's so caught up on the legislation, the laws that are being passed, and they're looking for members of the government to tell them what is true and what is not. Meanwhile, you have other people that have already developed technologies out there, like presenting it every day.
The problem is the true whistleblowers get treated like Assange. If you had a true whistleblower for some technology, he probably wouldn't live. If you had somebody, someone exposed like some sort of super, and I think this is what Dave was alluding to, super high end battery technology, where you have a battery this big that would store a month's worth of power for a whole house or something
It
like
doesn't
that.
really store the power; it just produces the power on demand.
Well, I think it's probably going to be the storage thing first, and then you know what I mean. That's my point. Is I don't think we're not going to get the mother of all technology to begin with. We're going to get the super duper battery that'll store it first.
That's why I mentioned SEG magnetics.
Yeah, I thought that's where you were going with that.
Yeah, segmagnetics.com, I believe, is what it is. And that guy is literally like John Searle's #1 student.
Because if it literally, you would literally bankrupt. You would wreck our economy overnight if you were able to distribute that kind of power to each, family in America or in the world.
The way he's selling it is as a power generator. So just a generator you can hook up, and it will provide the power you need for it. Like anything you pull on it, it will provide the power for it.
You think like maybe it could be like with the re-education idea, it could be like how we have to take driver's tests. Like it's a government provided course that is outside of academia, so it can't be influenced by agendas in one way or another. But it does meet a certain curriculum and a certain criteria to ensure that the public is educated on not only how to use AI properly and responsibly, but also how to not like have their world shattered if aliens do happen to be real on the planet. that's a big worry. A lot of people, I don't think it has that much of a risk, but the dissolving of creationism and things like that, that used to be a big fear if we were to discover aliens. I don't know if it'll come to that, but like it certainly would shake things up if we were to discover that we were being visited consistently by extraterrestrials. So like educating the human mind for that, like we're smart apes, that's about it. Or like we're apes with a computer on top. We aren't really like ready to handle all these things. So I feel like we do need a class like that.
I would say the education, I get what you're saying. And I would say that the education has a lot more to do with how you react to emotional trauma. Like instead of like getting angry and wanting to get in a fight, you just don't ever get angry. You understand that this is the way things are unfolding. Let's just move in this direction. I think it's more of that type of education. And maybe they could come up with some type of polygraph, very big maybe. They could come up with some type of polygraph test to see how you naturally react to stigmas and situations, to where you could get clear.
I don't think most people are going to be that rational, though. You know what I mean? I think most people will either be, you will be able to barely accept it, or you won't be able to accept it at all. Right? I don't think there's going to be anybody that, if they literally knew, would be that happy about it. I mean,
I guess what I was saying is more like, what's your natural intent? Are you actually like good natured, or do you have your own selfish desires? Right?
I think that's
like how can you test that or train people for that? I don't know. I really don't know the answer.
Like, I mean, your point about having a rational approach to our emotions and all that's rational emotive behavioral therapy. That's RABT. That is a form of therapy that's being used today. It's right up there with ACT and CBT. Those can help people to have the self-awareness and introspective habits that would lead them to be naturally desiring potentially a moral life, a life that they hold themselves to accountability, and that they already have the natural desire not to use these things for unwarranted means or nefarious means. I mean, I say this because a lot of times people, they get caught up in things, and like the extent to which they examine them is the extent to which it'll make them money. That's about all we're trained for in this country, until they're taught how to be good, or until they're taught how to at least have self-esteem and self-introspection habits ingrained there.
I'm talking about the idea,
power complexes.
I'm talking about the idea that they are all around us already. We just can't perceive them. If someone actually was convinced and believed that, I mean, you would have people, committing suicide. I mean, you know what I mean? There would be, it would be a pretty stark thing if you could actually convince people first. But once you were able to convince them through some form of, technology that was actually true, it would be a shock to a lot of people.
That's why I think the interdimensional telescope has a lot of importance in this, like the ability to actually see through the different dimensions and within our awake beta state, right? Like our physical universe, create a telescope that can see the outer and inner realms, you could say, of creation, to interact with these more sentient non-human intelligences. I don't think that's the threat. I think it's more just how the individual human would use the technology, because again, and I'm speaking very general, but I would say that the average human is somewhat selfish.
I think, and you and I are talking about like two different kinds of disclosure. You're talking about technology disclosure. I'm talking about the actual entity disclosure, like if there were.
Well, it's both of those. Like that's what I mean.
The technology would be a lot more accepted. If someone came out with this little box that powered your house forever, that's easy to accept, right?
Right.
But the fact that there may be some entity standing right next to you that you can't even see, that's not going to be that accepted. That's not going to be, because just the fear of the unknown is what kills people, right?
Yeah.
And
it's temporarily immobilizing. Like I think the idea when people lose their faith or like have major psychedelic revelations, or when they gain their faith or gain a new belief system, like these are they're paradigm shifts. Like they shift the paradigm upon which our main constructed reality is built upon, and that takes a while for people to adjust to, I think, but it doesn't necessarily have to like equal chaos. This was a fear that we had like a few decades back, that once we learned about aliens, like all of the world's religions would collapse and the people would run into the streets. I think that it's more like it would come about as more like a temporary thing, like what Sapolsky talks about with the Determined book. If people were to be educated well on how determinism and causality impacts their lives and how much that leaves them with a very rudimentary sense of free will, that also puts them in a very uncomfortable situation. This is what I went through when I started contemplating such things a while back. And he proposes like a quarantine system, basically, and he does it semi-jokingly, but like it's something where we can take people out of society for a couple weeks, let them adjust to this bold new world that they're about to enter, this whole new way of perceiving, and perhaps educate them in a very well-examined method during that time. I believe the same thing would happen like with the consideration of distributed cognition and how we are more a distributed organism than we are a singular entity. That's my opinion on that, just a caveat. That would be like a similar process with coming to a realization that there are entities all around us, because there are. We are surrounded by butterfly effects constantly. We are in an atmosphere of nitrogen, like 70% nitrogen and oxygen, like 30%. That's like we're always moving the earth through us. We're always like moving nature around. We're always being impacted by social psychology and cognitive psychology and all these other factors at play. Those, to take all that in, can indeed be overwhelming. This is where you get the proposal like people aren't built to comprehend such things. Well, maybe we are. Maybe it just takes like a little bit of time, because there's a lot of capacity our brains have for reforming themselves and adjusting to new ways of being.
Sorry, I had that stink bug trapped and he got away.
No, I totally get everything you're saying, Patrick. And what it reminded me of was so a human walking around on Earth, right? You can see the animals around you. Now put that same human in the open ocean and knowing that there's sharks underneath you, right? Swimming around the whole time. That same exact person will go from a state of very calm to very anxious because they might get eaten by a shark at any second.
Right.
Yeah, so that might be like one way to to simplify the whole analogy is like if we were to divulge,
but still you can see the shark when it's coming.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, though. Like when you divulge,
you can learn to deal with the shark, you know.
You can teach people how to get out of the water safely and not panic, I think, from the rational emotive behavioral therapy, or like the rational response to our emotions, allowing us to calm down and proceed maturely and responsibly in the moment.
Exactly. You get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Hopefully we're getting there. I think we're getting there. Like these therapies and approaches continue to progress. And there's freelancers, like that's kind of what I'm doing with the freelance mentorships, and mental health professional is what I identify or like label that I hold, as opposed to like clinical psychologist, somebody that's meeting inside a room. I prefer to be at a river or like in some place that's peaceful in nature, the people that I work with, because it's not restricted by academia. It's not restricted by certain rules. We're allowed to have these conversations in the public in kind of different forms now.
So I guess, yeah, then the question is like, how long does it take to make humanity comfortable swimming with sharks? Or like,
well, you have to give them. I mean, that's what I was alluding to. Is that you have to, you would have to be trained on how to, to face the shark and put your hand on its nose, and you know what I mean, instead of turn and run from it and act like a penguin or something, right? But again, you have to be able to have contact with that entity before the idea that they're not visible, they're on a different spectrum is going to be something hard mentally for people to overcome.
Well, and a lot of people don't understand like why they even do the actions that they do make. So to be aware of the pacing, that's why I always speak about the pacing motions of your life, like what thought form actually instilled that pacing motion. That way you can become aware of, in quotes, potentially, the effect of non-human intelligences from outer and inner dimensions. You need to understand what causes the pacing motions within your life. Then you can actually start to analyze it, and then, in a sense, put your hand on that shark's nose and push it away to be more well-rounded, and avoid that contact if it's not a helpful one.
What's the quote? It's like, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
100%. I would rather be that warrior in a garden.
Yeah. To be well honed, to have your mind and body and your reactions well honed, to be in like a forward center of mass, like leaning forward attitude towards life. Yeah. And ready to face challenges, like whenever those challenges come up. Yeah. There's a
That's
good
why I think
argument.
a lot of humanity.
Say that we're
now,
not
when you
doing
bring up AI and you already talk about modern Google,
say that quote again. It's better to be what?
It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
A warrior in a garden than a gardener in a
It's
war.
an ancient Chinese proverb.
Yeah. Huh? Is that Sun Tzu? Whatever.
It might be Lao Tzu. I think it's Lao Tzu. Yeah, I mean, there's good argument to be had saying that we're going the opposite direction. Honestly, I'm working on an essay about this. I'd like y'all to review this too. Hopefully, it'll be done in a couple weeks. I'm challenging the idea of psychological language, and we talked about this a little bit last time. Alexei, you had a term for it too, with like the diagnostic default and the defaulting to using diagnostic terminology. That can be very tempting towards the path of least resistance and can lead us towards using soft language, like how we talk about psychology as a soft science. That could be having a counterintuitive and counterproductive effects where we're kind of like celebrating our sufferings, and we do this naturally because misery loves company. We group together and we affirm our mutual sufferings, as opposed to in the East where you see the instantly instilled from childhood attitude of acceptance of dukkha, the ever-present suffering and ever-present sorrow, as it's also translated. Like the idea we're always going to be subjected to these states, and we need to find a balanced response to that, as opposed to finding a label for every single thing that could happen, that could go wrong, every single feeling that we have, that we all kind of agree on, that we feel similarly. Suddenly we attach a label to that, and it ends up in the DSM-5. Kind of to go on a rant about that. It's like the opposite of RBT, or like becoming rationally, emotively responsible.
Daniel's talking about we already believe or whatever. I think religion is different from. I don't think we can compare this to religion, because religion is such a distant thing. You can ignore it. I grew up in the church, but I'm not that religious, and I can just choose to be, think about God whenever I want to.
Well, so another example,
because we do have free will, and He gave us that free will. But if there are entities that are here around us that we can't perceive, that's a whole nother ball game. It doesn't really have anything to do with whether we believe it or not. It would, if they exist, if it was proven they existed, that's a different. There was no, the belief system goes out there would be no reason for a belief system per se.
Well, you'd still, under the way that I write about it in Universal Embodiment, you're always under a belief system. It's just which one you're activating, which one you're working as. It could be a framework. I
don't believe I have a truck sitting outside that I can drive. I know I have a truck sitting outside I can drive. But
you believe that truck will work and be a functional object that you can interact with.
That doesn't take much faith.
If you didn't, you trust. Well, you also trust that too. And there's so the trust, belief, and faith thing. That's a tricky one. I won't get into that. But there's another example I could use here where we have germophobia. So we're all well educated on the fact that we are surrounded by germs. We're like 60% bacteria, 40% our own cells. That can also be contested. I won't get into that. But the feeling of not fully being an occupant of this body and being very beholden to the world. Being very much influenced by a world of germs where we are outnumbered by the trillions constantly. We're very familiar with that. We learned that from our childhoods, or whenever you learned it, and we're still carrying on. We still live, and we make adjustments. So what we do, we learn the landscape. We do the salience landscaping and problem solving thing where we find the impact of those germs. We don't over sterilize our environments. We don't make ourselves completely sterilized to all bacteria. Some people do, and some people take that too far into germophobia. But the majority of us have a pretty good relationship where we kind of balance things out, or we just forget about it. That seems to be the method that I turn to.
But we still.
I can't think about how crazy that is, but I'll adapt.
I think we balance it out is a good statement. We end up balancing it out.
But we still have control to a certain. We feel like we have control. Right through our ego. I can take a bath in alcohol and get rid of all the little booger men on my skin if I want to. I can't. If I can't perceive an entity around me, I have no control over it. I can't repel it. I can't All I'm saying is I understand why there are people in the government who don't want disclosure because of this, ontological shock. I don't like the word ontological, but I'm just the only one I'm
No,
just
that's
repeating.
perfect.
Well, I know, but I'm just kind of sick of these, these words that
That's why
are
I
used
think it.
over and over again. I
That's
mean,
why I think
every other tweet on Twitter is ontological shock, existential.
Yeah.
that's why I think the re-education process, or the education process rather, is really important, because you guys were talking about like the truck starting in the yard. Now I'm a fisherman and I see ripples on the surface of the ocean. Well, those ripples, it doesn't take much faith to think that there's a fish creating those ripples, or that the wind blew and created ripples, right? So when it comes to like a being existing within a denser dimension, I don't think it really does take that much faith to see the effects that they might have on people.
I'm saying I don't think that I don't think it's a dimensional thing. Again, I'm thinking they're just on a spectrum we can't perceive. I mean, it'd be very simple for us not to be able to perceive them with our eyes, right? There's a lot of things that we can't perceive.
For some reason, that seems too simple to me.
No, I promise you, it's going to be that simple. I bet you anything, it's going to be more simple.
There'll be
the infrared picks them up too. Like we right? That's isn't that that's common knowledge, right? 786 angstroms, or the nanometers. 7,860 angstroms is the thermal spectrum to kind of catch these things. But like that's not all the time though. And I think that to be able to see the effects of these beings within people is a completely different skill, kind of like a fisherman looking out on in a murky ocean, but seeing the ripples of water that come up. It doesn't take much faith to say there's a big fish over there, or there's a big fish over there.
For this type of education, I think you're talking about starting from childhood.
You might be right.
I think it takes several generations to really like. I think I would probably be more accepting, but like especially people my age would be like, hell no, they would be in denial, or they would have to have strict. I would have to say, okay, come appear to me, and then once you did, I would
be like a dolphin and jump out of the water so I can actually see your body.
I want to see that. I want to see that shark coming at me. I don't want to have an invisible shark coming after me in the ocean. How do you know which way to face?
You have to have evidence. I mean, this is really tricky because I don't like to talk bad about faith and things like that. But I used to say the faith based in fact is well founded, but faith based in feeling is often folly. So we may feel like these things are around us, but that might not guide us to the right places.
I don't think
we can trust in these items, but it may not be something to be trusted.
I'm never going to relate faith to anything except for a religious belief, right? I'm not going to ever associate the word faith with whether there are ETs or not, or non-human intelligence.
Yeah, you don't have to. Like, again, if it's not something our brains are really evolved to comprehend, we can also question whether it's worth comprehending, I guess you could say.
That almost circles back to the conversation we had the other day, where it was like some aspects of philosophy just might not be worth our time, or like other aspects.
All the time. I'm always asking myself, like, if this is going somewhere. That's why I choose pragmatism, or try to like stay pragmatic with the philosophy I work on.
Yeah, so I guess I get what you guys are saying, and then like for me, it's like you see a ripple on the ocean, there's something there. Like, it doesn't take faith, right? Because it's not a belief, it's a knowing that something caused the ripple in the ocean. It's the same within like in my opinion, it's the same within a thought form entering a human. There's a reason that thought form entered that person.
That's why you'll see me using the word think instead of believe, or you know what I mean? I don't like associating the word believe with any kind of this phenomenon or any other, because I don't feel like that I should be expected to believe in it. if you want me to think it exists, you can just show it to me or prove that it exists. I don't have to. I don't want to believe in it. I don't want it to go. I don't want to take it that far. You know.
So the way that I've been writing about this, it's like we're always in a belief system because we have to always be telling ourselves a story because we can't possibly know everything. So Socrates said that the only thing that I truly know is that I know nothing. And that is the ultimate truth. We can't ever have perfect assurance of something. So we're always filling in gaps in one way or another. And so we take it on faith that our belief structure or belief system is taking us somewhere logical and will guide us well towards the future. But we can never have 100% assurance. If we go the route of 100% assurance, then we start getting cocksure and overconfident and cocksure. Sorry, I just want to say that word twice.
Well, that's where the first thing that came to mind again was the ego. And so is that somewhat, I don't know exactly where I was going with this, but like the ego is what allows us to be confident in the ocean, even though, but it's a false sense of security in a way. Like say I'm swimming out in the ocean, middle of the ocean, and I just have this ego. I'm safe. There's nothing below me. But then I just get eaten by a shark.
Yeah, ego betrays.
Like having that confidence allows you to sleep easy at night, but it might not be the case, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, you have to balance your ego and empirical fact, or balance it in like well-practiced fact. So you can be in a state of like Merleau-Ponty's optimal grip, where you're in a stance. Like John Vervaeke talks about Merleau-Ponty's optimal grip and his references to Tai Chi. In Tai Chi Chuan, you're taking on various stances. You're not really like, it's not so much about attacks like you'd see in jiu-jitsu and other forms. It's more like you're taking on this stance to be ready to form an optimal grip on how to react to this thing. I'm forming this stance to be able to be in the proper form to where I'll be confident in my ability to swim, but also in my ability to knock a shark out. I'm going to have the most fun as possible, but not be completely obsessed with my own ego as I'm swimming super confidently. I'm going to have one eye on being aware and one eye on joy, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I studied Tai Chi for like 7 years.
Word. I still need to do that. I keep hearing good things about it.
I always thought of Tai Chi as just an art, a pure art form, not any sort of offensive or defensive weapon.
It becomes extremely practical. So when I was like 13, I started Tai Chi. It's called Wallon Kung Fu out in Tampa, Florida. I did that for about 5 years. Then when I went to Colorado for my college education, I basically studied Shaolin Kung Fu and took Tai Chi there. But then after all that stuff, I ended up teaching martial arts for like 5 years. And that was all I practiced towards the end of my practice, was using Tai Chi and the practice of yielding and pushing.
But Tai Chi is, it's more related toward like yoga than it is like martial arts. Or, you know what I mean? An offensive, an offensive weapon. In other words, you know what I mean? It's
Tai Chi is the most difficult martial arts to master. It's
more of a psychological. It's more of a psychological art than it is an offensive weapon. Does that make sense?
Also a reactive art, maybe. But I would say like what they say. This is what they say. It takes about 7 years to master any traditional martial arts like Taekwondo, karate, something like that. It takes 30 years to master Tai Chi.
Like I remember when I was taking Taekwondo in my 20s. Yeah, when I was taking Taekwondo in my 20s, we would go to tournaments, right? And the Tai Chi people never touched anybody else. They just did their exercises. But in Taekwondo, we would spar, right? There was never any Tai Chi fights. It was just,
brush the knee and push.
They would do. It was like, that's like compared to like yoga, because it was like, okay, you did great, and then you get to the Taekwondo people, and it would be like, you know what I mean? And I don't know. That's my impression.
No, you're absolutely right. That's what I was getting at. Is like I used to spar with the Taekwondo, with the kickboxing guys, with the jiu-jitsu guys, and I would use Tai Chi. And they were just like, wow, kind of thing. Like, but that's where it takes a lot longer to master Tai Chi than it does a punch. Like to be able to actually see someone stepping into their power and throwing a punch versus being able to yield, react to it, and throw their end. Like it's a completely different style.
It's like when Bruce Lee would say things like "flow like water." He's thinking more about Tai Chi than he is, kung fu or so, or
Yeah.
That's the optimal grip. Like you're optimally flowing into the best position to be able to counter your opponent and perhaps take them down.
But not only that, but also understanding the angle of attacks. Yeah, exactly. So what you just mentioned would be like discussing the angle of attacks, but the ability to put a chopstick through a wall, right, has to do with perfect compression and perfect focus. So things of that nature like take way longer to master than being able to punch a wall and put a hole in it.
I look at that as more like the
Exactly.
Shaolin Kung Fu, that kind of stuff.
But it's Tai Chi at the end of the day, which was kind of part of the I Ching Ching process, which was brought by the Bodhirama to the Shaolin temples, because like the Bodhirama was like the Buddha dude, right? And basically he showed up at the Shaolin temples and was like, this is called yoga. And the Shaolin temple kicked him out. They were like, get out of here.
I was going to say the Shaolin, though, they're badasses.
Well, he went and studied 10 years in a mountain.
Shaolin monks are, they're they have these seemingly superpowers, I don't
They
know.
use EMI piercers.
Well,
I learned about that on Deadliest Warrior.
Thanks, what?
I could go on about this stuff forever. Like the human body itself will adapt to any situation that you put it into.
Right.
And so if you like constantly stress your body, you constantly create microfractures in your shins and you strengthen your tendons, you can do a lot of amazing feats. And that's where like Tai Chi strengthens tendons. It strengthens the delta and theta modes of your conscious awareness too. It's like where you take faster snapshots of reality. It takes way longer to master than like learning how to punch and break a board.
Like your processing speed increases? Yeah.
Yes, like because they do punches. Imagine how many conscious snapshots you take per punch. Like when you're doing Tai Chi, your punch might take 30 to 45 seconds. Well, if you're taking 60 snapshots per second, now you've taken 60 times 45. Versus when you do a Taekwondo or karate punch and you do that within a second, you get more frames like that solidify within your understanding of the motion, and so ultimately you end up like having you have more strength, you have more foundation, you can see things in slow motion when they happen. I'm a big fan of
Tai Chi to me is more like meditation in motion.
100%.
Almost.
Yeah.
From
mindfulness exercise. Yeah.
Whenever the guy James Hobby, if you look him up on the internet, it's the local instructor when I was in my 20s, and he was a Marine. He was an MP in the Marines, and he was a tough guy. And
but that's what
he knew these people from all over the world, and he would have them come to the dojo or whatever. And we would watch, he would have them do exercises for us. And the Tai Chi guys were always like very quiet and spiritual. And, that's why I always compared it to yoga, and, that more spiritual and meditation and motion than any of the other guys,
Yeah.
I think anyway, it was very fascinating to me,
Yeah, I think that like yoga, or the difference between yoga and Tai Chi and other martial arts is that it's like you're preparing for attacks and that you're bringing mindfulness into play, whereas yoga is more like taking the mind out of it a bit more. Like it's still a kind of a mindfulness practice, but it's more like focused on centering the body. Whereas with Tai Chi, you can indeed like throw chopsticks through a wall by exercising, like increasing your frame rate through increasing heart rate during certain times and possibly adrenaline production, maybe vasopressin, and noradrenaline, and other things that would literally increase your frame rate, and then bringing that into a calm state of processing, where you can be perceiving faster and processing faster, but also be in a flow state.
I was just using yoga as an analogy for people who hadn't been exposed to it actually in person with a person who's practicing Tai Chi, because you get more of an aura from someone who's doing a Tai Chi exercise than you do someone who's doing a karate or Taekwondo exercise.
That's why I brought up the Bodhirama taking yoga to the Shaolin temple and then being kicked out, because basically the Shaolin monks were like, you can't use yoga in any practical sense. And so then the Bodhirama basically went to a cave and studied for 10 years on different ways to apply yoga into a martial arts style, train that to the Shaolin monks, and then that created Tai Chi.
What
So,
I was
like-
doing was I was taking Kung Fu, Taekwondo, Karate, all this. And if I had to assign the attribute of yoga to one of them, it would be Tai Chi. Right?
Right, yeah.
That's
100%.
all.
Yeah,
That's all I
asking-
was doing. I
Yeah,
wasn't really
100%.
trying to. I wasn't really trying to compare them necessarily. I was just saying.
No, I
Well,
was
like
trying to
yoga is
use
like
that as
the
an
base
example.
of Tai Chi, so they're 100% related.
Yeah.
We all need to be doing this anyways. Like I agree with Rebecca and others that we all need to have some kind of like well-established mind-body connection exercise. Some people get lucky. I do think that some people are genetically predisposed to be naturally very introspective and have a lot of sense of will and sense of agency. For myself, that definitely wasn't the case. I had to train a lot.
For me, it might have also been, you could say, environmental, because both my brothers were practicing martial arts before I was even old enough to actually join the gym. And so one thing I noticed that they were doing was sitting in focus position. It's like with your legs crossed, hands on your knees. It's called focus position. And so that was like one thing I could easily do just watching the class was like, all right, I'm going to sit in focus position in the stands meanwhile they do it. And so I was practicing meditation while they were actually doing the moves, and until I was like old enough, the age of 5, to actually start practicing with my brothers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's very necessary. You can kind of tell when people don't have these exercises too. And, it would be nice if we taught that in public schools as well, or just like some kind of. We have gym classes and we have like track and like sports and all that, but yeah, we're very lacking on the introspective practices.
Yeah, they don't do anything about that. They're not like, no introspective there. It's put the ball on the hoop or put the ball on the goal, right? Like
there's there's like we can encourage goal orientation mindset where you're literally shooting for a goal, and that can lead to problem solving mindset, that's really what a lot of CBT is about. But that's not the whole picture of the human experience. Everything is not a problem to be solved. That's how you get, well, like I argue about in this essay, like to a psychotherapist, everyone is or to a psychoanalyst, I should say, everyone is there to be fixed, or everyone has a problem that can be elucidated. To a hammer, everything looks like nails. And that can be really problematic.
last little tidbit, I guess, here, but if I don't know, like if we're dying down, but like that's why I think that practices such as yoga and Tai Chi actually allow people to consciously connect to outer and inner realms, because the frame rate is adjusted, right? So instead of taking that 1 picture per second or the 60 frames per motion, I'm taking like 500 frames per motion. And what does that actually do to your ability to consciously connect to a faster dimension or a slower dimension? So I think through those like slow flow type motions, you train your body to connect to the pacing. That's why I call it the pacing motions of your life. Like you understand what causes the micro twitches in your body. And so that becomes a fish somewhat disturbing the ocean, the surface of an ocean. Now you see these ripples. It's like, well, what caused that ripple? For me, it doesn't take much to say that something caused the ripple on the surface of the ocean. And so when I'm walking, what caused that little slight disturbance, or what caused these different things? And that's where I think that knowing, like we were saying earlier, like knowing yourself and the ability to know yourself and the motions you make is extremely important when it comes to this topic, because that's how you learn to fend off the sharks.
Right.
Yeah.
You become more in touch with yourself and can respond to reality faster instead of being beholden to it.
Yeah, and also instead of having that reactive mind, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the way that most people just come into the world is, I mean, we were saying kind of selfish earlier. I mean, naturally, that's the path of least resistance. That's what the brain is very much evolved to do, is to take advantage of whatever resources are available to it. People describe it as like being in a black box, just using our senses to like perturbate the environment and learn to align itself with it as best it can. So it's doing that from like a really rudimentary level until it uses language and it uses like modern day therapy techniques or whatever you want to call it, or martial arts or physical practices that help align the mind and body and help to bring about more self-awareness. So now, like and I mean, I feel like personally, I got lucky with the psychedelics because this radically accelerated that process. It radically accelerated my processing of my moving of my body in real time and physical space. I have an extremely good sense of balance, and I have a highly accelerated flow state. Like at work, I'm doing upholstery, and I learn. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say at least 10 times faster than most people. I'm able to enter a flow state mindfully, quickly, and also like keep a cognition going on that at the appropriate times instead of interrupting the flow state with my cognition at inappropriate times, like when I'm studying a line of staples, for example.
Yeah.
So the psychedelics really, like, I noticed that after I started using doing microdosing and a couple like large doses, I was a completely new person. What that sounds like is cheating to me. This is why I don't recommend people doing that, because that's a shortcut. What you really want is those real long-lasting practices. You're exercising your body and your mind connection with like Tai Chi Chuan or other meditative practices like that are physically active meditative practices, because that lasts. Fortunately, the way that I approached it was over many months, and I'm still doing this off and on with the microdosing, and that accelerated it for me. And that's not exactly the kind of cheating that I'm describing. The kind of cheating I mean is like a major psychedelic revelation where people feel like they've grown a lot, but it's really just they got shown a lot.
Well, that's where that can be catastrophic to individuals too. Like, say if they were to do like some big dose or something like that, now they've reached this state, but they don't really know how to utilize that within their day-to-day lives, right? But if you like slowly build up that ability, that's completely different. Yeah.
Right. We need to be encouraging that in society somehow.
Looks like Daniel learned how to turn the TV on with his trips. Daniel,
Nice.
you're an amazing guy. Look, I hate to be party pooper, but I have to still do a bunch of crap before I have to go to bed. And I got to get up early in the morning. So
I have another show I'm doing in about 2 hours, so I'm ready to take a break.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, that's right. You got to do something at 2 a.m. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, I
Well,
gotta
guys,
like
thanks.
help Ireland, you know.
Thank you for coming on short notice. Again, I just found out how many hours ago? 4 or 5 hours ago that Dave was able to make it. So, and you guys turned up. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's
Artisan,
always a
thank you
pleasure.
for having me. And then also, like, I really like what you're doing with your artisan AI. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well,
same
thank
here.
you. It's just a little hobby thing. I'm just honestly trying to understand the whole thing better, just so I don't become afraid of it. No, but I hope I have a very practical outlook for it, and I'm actually excited about it. I don't think people should fear it. I understand what the way you're approaching it or understanding it, Patrick. But I think it'll be people like you that help guard against, the people who are smarter than me. Hopefully, will be the ones who help also protect humans.
Hey, that's why I'm
Yeah.
doing the Gaius pledge thing. I want to encourage people to take the good AI sportsmanship pledge. Saying I'm going to like spell out to you as I write my books and as I do YouTube scripts and all that. This is the way I'm using AI. I'm just using it for research. I'm not going to use it for content creation. If we can let people, I believe that people will gravitate towards people that go with this kind of promises as the future continues, as opposed to people just using them for whatever. But again, how would you know?
The problem is, I was just going to say, the problem is you're not going to know you're using, like if you use any service like Grammarly or, those services are already using AI to help you with your
Right.
grammar when they're basically.
Well, grammar's fine. Like I'm not going to, I guess
they're basically rewriting papers for people while they're doing grammar.
Yeah. You can make yourself sound way smarter than you are with them.
Yeah. And see, for what's funny is that in my book I'm writing, I have a chapter that I say was produced by AI, right? That talks about the artisan philosophy, but I'm stating that that's what the chapter is about. It's an experiment, right? But people will, even if I hadn't done that, if I had stated that, people would be able to read that chapter and know from reading the rest of the book that it wasn't me. And I think that's going to be true for a lot of humans that, unless you train a model specifically on your own language, then people are going to know, you know what I mean? A smart person like you or Alexei is always going to be able to read a paper and know pretty much whether it was written by AI or that person.
Well,
I
at this
think
point,
so.
I feel it's necessary to say I've used spell check through Microsoft Word.
Good. You should. That's
That's about it,
normal.
though.
Yeah.
What did I do, Daniel? What did I do? What's the TV? I was just kidding, Daniel. Gosh, you don't have to be so mean about it. That was just a joke, Daniel. Daniel always finds a reason to get mad at me. I don't know why. It was humor. Okay. Gotta find humor and stuff, Daniel.
Like the accent, ours.
I appreciate Daniel. He's been hanging out for a long time around my videos, and I appreciate it.
Well, I'm open to hanging out for like 5 more minutes after we close out the
Okay.
live.
Well, we'll end it here because I really do have to do some laundry and take a shower and go to bed and get up in the morning real early. So thank you to all of the people out there. Daniel, the power of one. Who else do we have? Okay, I have to go all the way back up here. I thought there was one other person I wanted to thank. Anyway, thanks to all who came and listened. And we're going to have a show pretty soon. It's just based on the Toys for Tiny Artisans show. That's where we collect toys every year and give it to needy kids. But it's a theme. It's anyway, it's a long story. You can go to toysfortinyartisans.com and I've already got our toys coming that we're going to give away, and we take a little Christmas card that's geared towards teaching kids about the trades, and we try to inspire them to become artisans. And
what's the deadline for giving you a toy?
No, what I'm trying to do is I'll have a download on the website where you can download the card, and what it'll be is that I'm just asking people, I'm going to have a giveaway where if people participate, they download the Christmas card and they just attach it to the toy they're giving away in their local place, right? Then we're gonna have a drawing near Christmas, and I'm gonna give away like $100 gift card to who we're gonna have a drawing for the people who participated, and but I'm trying to edit a video. That's one thing I have to do tomorrow is edit a video. Talking about it, so it's just something fun. When the kids were really young, it was something I taught them to do, just to give back each year, and we've been doing it ever since. And so I finally decided to give it an artisan theme. I decided to plant my propaganda in with the gift, so I could my artisan propaganda on the Christmas card.
It's good propaganda.
So, It tries to get the parent to go to the Toys for Tiny Artisans, and there it shows them the steps for becoming an artisan. So anyway, it's just my little way to encourage more people to get into the trades and become artisans.
You got that from Boy Scouts, didn't you?
What's that?
Because never mind. We'll go into this in the next another.
Yeah, we'll do it. We can do that. We'll do that. Okay. Well. Again, thanks everybody for showing up tonight, and we will see you I know for sure on the 20th, Tim Burchett's going to be here. So that's 20th of December. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning. So please plan on seeing that. So thanks everybody. I appreciate it. Let's do this.
What you're about to see is a real-life story. The accounts have gone into great detail to give each side's version of this, an exclusive one, we understand. One of the most talked about